Chapter 2168, Assisting in the Investigation, 3. Although Dongfang Yu's words were rather impolite, they were the truth. Back then, he didn't like Yaoji very much because she and Wu Yen were too troublesome. They had a small fight every 3 days and a big fight every 5 days, making the Divine Master's estate a mess. They were also very good at pretending. They were absolutely unbelievably obedient in front of Master Yu, but they were completely different in private. At the time, he didn't want to get involved in the two troublesome women's affairs, so he ignored them. However, after going through thick and thin with Yaoji for so long, even if he didn't like her, he had developed some feelings for her and was more tolerant of her. Now he knew he was wrong. This woman couldn't be nice to her, or she would definitely push herself over him. Dongfang Yu's words made Yaoji extremely excited. Then she roared in anger, "Do you want to erase my contribution? What benefits did Lung Ruoxue give you to make you treat me like this? We've known each other for so many years, and you're actually helping an outsider. I'm so disappointed in you." At this moment, Yaoji was so angry that she couldn't care about respecting Dongfang Yu anymore. Otherwise, she would never have dared to yell at him like this in the past. But now, she was surrounded by anger and resentment, so she naturally couldn't care about being afraid. You've contributed, but there are many people who have contributed more than you. No one is as ignorant as you. Furthermore, Lung Ruoxue is not an outsider. She's Master Ye's disciple. Dongfang Yu explained patiently. However, Yaoji scoffed at Dongfang Yu's words. She sneered a few times and then said loudly, "Master Ye's disciple? How could she be considered Master Ye's disciple? Don't you remember that when Master Yu accepted her as his disciple, he had already passed away? She was only lucky to obtain Master Ye's inheritance. Unfortunately, she can't get our recognition." In the divinity, taking in a disciple was an extremely important matter. With Xiang Ye's status, it was an even more glorious thing to become his disciple. Therefore, the emperor should announce to the world that he was taking in a disciple. As for Lung Ruoxue, when she became his disciple, he had already passed away. Hence, in the eyes of Yaoji and the others, her identity as a disciple was not justified and not justified. Otherwise, Yaoji would not have dared to go against Lung Ruoxue in every way. Other than Lung Ruoxue's beauty, Yaoji was also jealous of her identity. From her point of view, Lung Ruoxue's luck was simply too good. It was so good that it was unbearable. Hence, she was jealous of Lung Ruoxue. Who says she can't get our recognition? Yaoji's words made Dongfang Yu frown again before he replied indifferently. What do you mean by that? Could it be that you want to recognize her as your master? No. I won't agree to it. Yaoji quickly shouted after hearing the hidden meaning in Dongfang Yu's words. It doesn't matter whether you agree or not. Furthermore, I can tell you right now that after our discussion, we feel that Lung Ruoxue definitely has the ability to make us pledge our loyalty. As for you, just wait for your punishment. Dongfang Yu said coldly. With that, he turned and left Yaoji's room without even looking at her. After Dongfang Yu left, Yaoji collapsed on the bed as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out. After a long time. Only then did Yaoji pull herself together and mutter to herself, "No. I will not allow such a thing to happen. I will not allow a woman to ride on my head." At this thought, Yaoji was so excited that she forgot about her injuries and wanted to get off the bed. However, the sudden pain made her legs go soft and she fell to the ground. Damn it! Rubbing her aching leg, Yaoji bit her pink lips in anger. It was all Lung Ruoxue's fault that she was in such a miserable state. At this moment, she had long forgotten that the knife that had cut her leg belonged to her. Instead, she had pushed all the blame onto Lung Ruoxue. Only then would she feel more at ease. Some people were like this. It was clearly their own fault, but they couldn't see their own shortcomings. When something happened, they were unwilling to find the reason on themselves and liked to blame everything on others. Obviously, Yaoji was this kind of person. After sitting on the ground and resting for a while, Yaoji managed to get up with great difficulty. She then supported herself with the wall and left the room. She didn't believe Dongfang Yu's words anymore, so she had to verify them one by one. After one round, Yao Ji's heart sank to the bottom, and her heart ached even more. She had asked many people about their opinions on Leng Ruoxue, but to her surprise, many people who had the same thoughts as her had changed their minds. They were just as Dong Fangyu had said, almost all of them had acknowledged Leng Ruoxue. And with her questioning, those people's attitude towards her had also changed greatly. Those who admired her were no longer obedient to her. This fact made her very disappointed. She would never acknowledge Leng Ruoxue. She would never acknowledge her. At the same time, she would never allow those people to give her the cold shoulder. She was Yaoji, a Yaoji who was as famous as rime ice. Back then, the two of them were known as the #1 beauties in the divine realm. Although there were not many people who remembered her now, her pride was still there. Her pride wouldn't allow her to fall into such a desolate situation where she was deserted by her loved ones. Yaoji, who was sent back to her room, lay on the bed in anger. Her heart was in turmoil, and the more she thought about it, the deeper her hatred for Leng Ruoxue deepened. She deeply felt that it was all Leng Ruoxue's fault that she was being ignored. Hence, she would never let Leng Ruoxue off. She wanted Leng Ruoxue to taste the feeling of being ignored. With that thought, Yaoji miraculously calmed down. In the days that followed, Yaoji seemed to have changed into a different person. Not only did she stay in her room quietly to recuperate, but she also treated the visitors with a kind expression. She even got someone to pass a message to Dong Fangyu, saying that she knew she was in the wrong and wanted to sincerely apologize to Leng Ruoxue. When Leng Ruoxue found out about this, she only smiled and did not have any other reaction. As for Dong Fangyu and the others, they couldn't believe that Yaoji would really change her opinion of Leng Ruoxue. However, if the two of them could get along peacefully, they would definitely welcome them. After all, they had been with Yaoji for so many years. No matter how unpopular Yaoji was, this kind of friendship that went through thick and thin together was hard to erase. Yaoji's change also made Dong Fangyu and the others pause their plans to punish her and adopt a wait-and-see attitude. After all, Xie Ling still had to be a Ling person, and Yaoji was responsible for this matter. If she could take the initiative to admit her mistake and obtain Leng Ruoxue's forgiveness, that would be the best. Yaoji didn't disappoint them. After she recovered from her injuries, she started to hang out with Leng Ruoxue every day. Her enthusiasm made Leng Ruoxue feel uneasy, because this didn't seem like something Yaoji would do. However, in order to cooperate with Yaoji, Leng Ruoxue decided to wait and see. With that, her courtyard became more and more lively. Dong Fangyu and the others took advantage of the situation and took the opportunity to bond with Leng Ruoxue. It was a pity that no matter what they did, Leng Ruoxue remained indifferent. This fact almost drove many people crazy. On a certain day, as usual, Leng Ruoxue was lying on a recliner in the garden. At this moment, Dong Fanglin walked in with a group of guards. Leng Ruoxue raised her brows in confusion when she saw Dong Fanglin's posture. She thought to herself, when did this fellow learn to put on airs? However, who was he putting on airs for? Is there something? Leng Ruoxue lifted her eyelids and asked calmly. Something happened. The elders will need your help with the investigation. In just one night, 80% of the people in the castle had been poisoned. The remaining 20% were extremely weak. The only ones who were not affected were the Reverend God-level experts, Leng Ruoxue, and the others. Is it related to me? Leng Ruoxue said. Someone has pointed out that you were the one who poisoned him. Dong Fanglin was speechless. He would never believe that Leng Ruoxue would do such a thing. Even though he had not known Leng Ruoxue for a long time, he still trusted her. However, this matter had already spread throughout the entire underground city and had a very bad influence. Hence, he had no choice but to put on an act and look for Leng Ruoxue. His motive was naturally to hope that she could clarify this matter in front of all the residents in the underground city. After hearing what he said, Leng Ruoxue finally understood Dong Fanglin's motive. I'll go and explain it to you. Leng Ruoxue stood up and spoke to Dong Fanglin calmly. With that, she walked out of the courtyard and headed towards the meeting hall. The moment Dong Fanglin saw her, he immediately brought his men to follow her. As she walked into the meeting hall, Leng Ruoxue realized that the large hall was already filled with people. Of course, most of these people were elders with high status in the underground city. Out of caution, a few consecrators were also present. Initially, the discussion hall was still very lively and many people were whispering to each other. However, the moment Lung Ruoxue appeared, the hall immediately quieted down. Many people looked at Lung Ruoxue with conflicted expressions. Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes swept across the crowd. Then, she took the initiative to find a chair and sit down. Miss Lung, many people in the castle have been poisoned. I think you should be clear about this matter. Dong Fangyu glanced at Lung Ruoxue and said in a reserved manner. Because he was only here to get Lung Ruoxue to cooperate with the investigation, Dong Fangyu's attitude was very good. Furthermore, he didn't believe that Lung Ruoxue would do such a thing. It was really unnecessary. In this case, this matter was worth pondering over. Chapter 2169, Confrontation and Evidence, 1. I've heard about it. I've also heard that someone proved that I was the one who poisoned her. Is that true? Lung Ruoxue raised her beautiful eyes and said calmly. Lung Ruoxue's question made Dong Fangyu feel a little awkward, but he still answered honestly, there is such a thing. But don't worry, Miss Lung, we want wrong innocent people. If that's the case, then please bring out the witness and let us confront him face to face. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. However, when Dong Fangyu heard this, he was a little hesitant and even a little conflicted. Lung Ruoxue noticed this and asked in surprise, what's wrong? Is it not convenient for the witness to come out? You dare to testify against me, yet you don't dare to confront me face to face? No, Dong Fangyu said. He was afraid that the witness would start a fight with Lung Ruoxue because of a disagreement. The matter had not been investigated yet, so he really did not want to see such a scene. Then let him come out. They'll see who's the one who pointed me out. Lung Ruoxue said directly. All right then. Dong Fangyu finally nodded. Then he gave Uncle Lien a look. Uncle Lien understood and turned to leave. Not long after, an extremely unwilling woman followed behind him. That lady was none other than Yaoji, who had been on good terms with Lung Ruoxue recently. Of course, it was mainly because of her. When Lung Ruoxue saw Yaoji, her beautiful eyes narrowed. She thought to herself, so this woman is the witness. Instantly, she felt more confident. After that, Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes shifted slightly. She used her peripheral vision to observe the reactions of the people present and noted down their reactions in her heart. If these people believed Yaoji's words, Lung Ruoxue felt that she could leave this place and return to her residence. However, from the looks of the people present, they didn't fully believe Yaoji's testimony. The truth was just as Lung Ruoxue had expected. Most of them didn't believe Yaoji's words, but seeing as Yaoji made it sound so convincing, they had no choice but to ask Lung Ruoxue to come out. In reality, they didn't intend for the two of them to meet so soon, but Dong Fangyu had agreed for them to confront each other face to face, so they had no choice but to allow this scene to play out ahead of schedule. However, just like Dong Fangyu, they were afraid that the two women would start fighting because of a disagreement. If that happened, it would be very lively. For a moment, many people's eyes widened, and their hearts were filled with fear. They didn't know how this scene would play out. They were actually looking forward to it. However, it was a good thing that Lung Ruoxue was not aware of their thoughts. Otherwise, she would definitely be so depressed that she would vomit blood. Shouldn't a confrontation be a very serious matter? Why did these people want to watch the show instead? How could they let those poisoned people endure this? Ever since Uncle Lien half-dragged Yaoji into the meeting hall, she had been feeling uneasy. However, she kept encouraging herself and telling herself that Lung Ruoxue was the one who poisoned her. Lung Ruoxue was the one who poisoned him. When Yaoji walked to the center of the meeting hall, Dong Fangyu asked indifferently, Yaoji, didn't you say that Lung Ruoxue was the one who poisoned you? Now that Lung Ruoxue is here, you can confront her face to face. Hearing this, Yaoji finally dared to look at Lung Ruoxue. However, she realized that Lung Ruoxue was sitting and there were no empty chairs in the entire hall. Instantly, she, who had been feeling uneasy, was enraged. Damn it! On what basis could Lung Ruoxue, the person who had poisoned him, sit down. And she, the witness, had to stand like a criminal and let everyone inspect her? Such a sharp contrast made Yaoji feel extremely unbalanced. Then she roared in anger, "What right does a sinner like her have to sit here? I should be the one sitting, she should be standing." Dongfang Yu was rendered speechless by Yaoji's words. It was only today that he realized how low her IQ was. Was it important who was sitting? Wasn't she supposed to repeat what she had said to them in front of Leng Ruoxue so that the two of them could confront each other face to face? In the end, Yaoji began to question who was sitting and who was standing. More importantly, even though Yaoji had pointed out that Leng Ruoxue was the one who had poisoned her, they couldn't just convict her based on her one-sided statement, right? If that was the case, there would be many false charges in this world. Besides, after a private discussion with the hierarch, they all felt that Leng Ruoxue would never do such a thing. In that case, the only person who could lie was Yaoji. Although Yaoji wasn't in their favor, they really didn't want to believe that she would do such a thing. After all, they had gone through so many hardships together. But obviously, they were going to be disappointed. However, they also needed to hear what Leng Ruoxue had to say. As for how they would handle this matter, it would also depend on the outcome of the confrontation between the two. They didn't want to wrong the innocent, but they also didn't want to let any bad people off. Especially those who framed others for their own selfish desires. "Miss Yaoji, what right do you have to call me a sinner? What crime have I committed?" Seeing that no one was paying attention to Yaoji, Leng Ruoxue could only speak kindly to avoid an awkward silence. "You've poisoned us and caused all of us to be poisoned. Therefore, you've committed the most heinous crime. Unforgivable." Yaoji roared furiously. At this moment, she had forgotten the uneasiness in her heart and only wanted to seek justice for herself. "I poisoned you. What evidence do you have to accuse me like this?" Leng Ruoxue chuckled as she questioned. "Of course I have evidence, because I saw it with my own eyes." Yaoji raised her head and puffed out her chest, speaking in an imposing manner. "You saw it with your own eyes? Then why didn't you stop me at that time? Why didn't you call for help? Now that everyone here has been poisoned, you jump out to testify against me. What are you up to?" Leng Ruoxue shook her head as she spoke. She was clearly disappointed in Yaoji's ability to set people up. Upon hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, the elders and sinecures present looked at Yaoji with hostility. Some of the elders even questioned her directly. "Miss Leng is right. Miss Yaoji, you have to give us a reasonable explanation. Why didn't you stop her when you saw her poisoning us?" Hearing this elder's words, Leng Ruoxue could not help but laugh in her heart. He didn't expect someone to be so cooperative. Let's see how Yaoji will clear her name now. I didn't know at that time. I only remembered it when everyone was poisoned. Besides, I'm also poisoned. Do you think I'd joke around with my life?" Yaoji stammered for a long time before she finally said what she wanted to say. However, the elder obviously didn't want to let Yaoji off just like that. He continued to ask, "You said you don't know, but do you have any evidence? Besides, we all know that you're only lightly poisoned. Otherwise, you wouldn't be standing in front of us alive and kicking." Chapter 2170, Confrontation and Evidence. 2. As soon as she said this, many elders and foreign elders felt that it made sense and nodded continuously. Then, they all looked at Yaoji in unison, waiting for her explanation. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue was already laughing in her heart. Isn't this too dramatic? She was supposed to be the one being questioned, but now it was the opposite. But this was good, she was happy to watch a good show. Yaoji stammered again. Then, she glared at the elder who spoke and reminded him loudly, "I'm a witness, not a criminal. What right do you have to interrogate me? If you want to interrogate someone, shouldn't you interrogate Leng Ruoxue?" Yaoji was about to go crazy. These people were really too much. She had come out to testify out of good intentions, but she was suspected instead. What the hell was this? She had never felt so aggrieved in her entire life, except for the time when she was locked up by the mist. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. The elder was very calm when he heard Yaoji's words. Of course she has to ask. However, there are too many unreasonable things about you, so she has to ask you first. The elder's words were so matter-of-fact that Yaoji couldn't refute them. The anger in her heart surged to the top of her head, but she didn't know what to say because she was very guilty. Miss Yaoji, you said that you saw Miss Lung poisoning someone, but you said that you didn't know it was poison, so you didn't say anything at the time. But now, are you sure that it was poison? How can you be so sure now? The elder's tongue-twister-like words made Yaoji dizzy. Her head buzzed and she saw stars. She was so angry that her body trembled. Then, everyone saw her eyes roll back and she fainted. Upon seeing this, the elder said with a little dissatisfaction, Miss Yaoji, even if you've fainted, you still have to make things clear. Seeing how powerful this elder was, Lung Ruoxue had a good impression of him. At this moment, she stood up from her chair and said to a certain elder, I have a way to wake her up. Oh, it'll have to trouble you then, Miss Lung. The elder said. Following that, the crowd saw a long silver-white needle as thick as a chopstick appear in Lung Ruoxue's hand. The needle was nearly 3 feet long and was emitting a white glow. Instantly, everyone shivered. What was she trying to do? Very soon they found out. Everyone present watched as Lung Ruoxue pierced that terrifying long needle into Yaoji's body. In an instant, warm, red blood sprayed out. However, the injured Yaoji only trembled a little and didn't wake up. Lung Ruoxue could only continue to work hard. In an instant. After a few rounds, Yaoji, whose body was riddled with holes and her clothes were already stained red with blood, slowly woke up. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw her. Although many people didn't really like Yaoji, they still sympathized with her after she was woken up like this. The crowd looked at Lung Ruoxue with respect. However, a certain heartless elder said happily, It's still Miss Lung who has a way. Miss Lung is really too amazing. His flattery made the people present curl their lips. Even his direct superior, Dongfang Lin, couldn't bear to listen to it anymore. In fact, he was the one who had incited the Council of Elders to make things difficult for Yaoji. However, Dongfang Lin didn't expect the old man to perform so well. This was really out of his expectations. Average. It's just a small matter. Hearing the elder's flattery, Lung Ruoxue appeared rather calm. Then she sat back down on her chair. At this moment, Yaoji, who was in a daze, was jolted awake by the pain. Then she saw that her body was covered in red blood. This scene almost made her faint again, but she held on and suddenly shouted, Damn it, who did this? You actually want to murder me? I did it. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. You are seeking revenge. Just because I pointed you out, you're going to kill me. Yaoji roared in anger, her beautiful face flushed red. I say, your hallucination is too serious. Why would I want to kill you? I'm clearly helping you. Lung Ruoxue said with an innocent look. Then, she looked at the people present and asked gently, Did I try to kill her? No, I didn't. One of the elders was the first to answer. The others shook their heads as well. Even though Lung Ruoxue's actions were indeed suspicious of revenge, she was really trying to save Yaoji. Look, I really didn't want to kill you. In fact, I was saving you. Lung Ruoxue was very satisfied with the cooperation of the elders and consecrated. Then she turned to Yaoji. Save me? Hearing this, Yaoji's hatred deepened. Yaoji was furious when she saw the numerous bloody holes on her body. Was there such a way to save people? She had turned her body into a sieve. Moreover, she only just remembered that she had been woken up by the pain. From this, it could be seen how much effort Lung Ruoxue had put in to save her. Yes, to save you. Right, let's continue the interrogation. Now, please answer this elder's question honestly. How can you be so sure that I poisoned you? And how did you find out that I had poisoned you? Tell me the time and place, or I'll sue you for slander. Lung Ruoxue said with a serious expression. The night before yesterday, I saw you go to the well in the city and throw a bag of white powder into it. However, you didn't notice my existence at that time, and I was afraid that you would notice, so I immediately returned to my room after seeing this scene. The next day, except for a few hierarch experts, most of the people were poisoned. Even though she was almost speechless from Lung Ruox's anger, Yaoji still tried to calm herself down and narrate her story. You haven't said it yet? How could you be so sure that the powder I threw into the well was poison? Lung Ruoxue reminded after hearing Yaoji. Because after you threw the powder into the well, we were all poisoned. Isn't that enough? Yaoji's eyes widened in disbelief. She would never give Lung Ruoxue a chance to quibble, but from the looks of it, this little girl was not easy to deal with. For a moment, she had a headache. Furthermore, she had not expected Lung Ruoxue to be so difficult to deal with. She had already said that she had seen it with her own eyes, but the other party was still so persistent. This was really infuriating. Of course it's not enough. Your evidence is obviously not credible, because you only saw me throwing powder into the well, but you don't know what it was. If you think I poisoned you, I won't accept it. I was just about to say that I didn't poison you, but instead, I gave you a miraculous elixir that was beneficial to your body. Lung Ruoxue said nonchalantly, but she couldn't help sighing in her heart. Yaoji's intelligence is too low. Even if she wanted to frame her, she shouldn't have stepped out to testify against her. Wouldn't he be exposing himself? Chapter 2171. Confrontation and Evidence. 3. In her opinion, Yaoji was hopelessly stupid. But in fact, Yaoji had her own difficulties. Even though she had thought of finding someone to stand up for her and testify against Lung Ruoxue, recently, her social relations had deteriorated to the point where no one was willing to work for her. To put it bluntly, she could not order anyone around. Even the most ordinary waiter in the underground castle did not care about her anymore. As such, she had no choice but to do it herself. Furthermore, she felt that if she were to step in, the credibility would be higher. After all, she had been very close to Lung Ruoxue recently. The two of them were obviously as good as one person. If she were to testify, she believed that most people would believe her. However, she would never have thought that not many people would believe her words. In fact, the few people who did not completely deny her words were also skeptical of her words. However, they did not believe Lung Ruoxue immediately either because they believed in the evidence more. However, after the verbal confrontation between the two of them, those people were easily sent to Lung Ruox's side by Yaoji. They were completely on Lung Ruox's side. This was a fact that Yaoji would never have imagined. You don't quibble. After a long time, Yaoji, who had been thinking about how to fight back, finally spoke. I'm not quibbling. I'm telling the truth. If you have evidence to prove that I really poisoned you, then take it out. After all, words are not proof. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. I've already said that I saw it with my own eyes. Not knowing how to react, Yaoji decided to insist on this reason. Insufficient evidence. It's not enough to be trusted. Lung Ruoxue retorted. Then she revealed a bright smile and said, if you want to convict me based on your one-sided words, then can I also say that you were the one who poisoned me? You're slandering me. Yaoji flew into a rage when she heard this. Of course, the main reason was that she felt too guilty. I'm telling the truth. I saw with my own eyes that you dropped a pack of white powder into the well in the city the night before. The next day, almost everyone here was poisoned. Lung Ruoxue repeated Yaoji's words and returned them to her. You don't talk nonsense. What evidence do you have? Yaoji trembled in anger at Lung Ruox's words. Her face turned green and white, and her hands were so cold that they were a little stiff. I've seen it with my own eyes. Isn't that enough? Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly and asked back. Not enough. Not enough. They won't believe your one-sided story if you don't have any evidence. So, don't even think about framing me. Yaoji roared in anger. Although her words were almost the same as Lung Ruoxue's, their emotions were completely different. Lung Ruoxue was rather calm, while Yaoji was so angry that she almost lost her mind. Seeing her like this, the crowd shook their heads. Didn't she say the same thing about Lung Ruoxue just now? Now that he had returned her words, why did Yaoji have such a big reaction? Indeed, it was infuriating to compare people. I have evidence to prove that Nyo didn't frame you. At this moment, a lazy voice entered everyone's ears. Then, they saw a snow-white rabbit without a single stray hair walk in from outside. Who allowed you to come in? Is this a place a rabbit like you can come to? Seeing Song and hearing its words, Yaoji was so scared that her little heart started to tremble. Although she told herself not to believe the rabbit's words, she couldn't be completely at ease. Therefore, she had to find a way to drive the rabbit out. However, Song Yaoji's words didn't seem to faze him. Instead, he said indifferently, "You should feel honored that I'm willing to come here." After saying that, Song immediately jumped into Lung Ruoxia's arms and found a comfortable position to lie down. "You're just a rabbit, why should we feel honored? You think too highly of yourself." Yaoji sneered in anger. "You're right, I really thought too highly of myself. Ugly monster. If you have any last words, say them quickly. Otherwise, you won't have the chance when I produce evidence." Azure reminded with a smile, but in his heart he couldn't help but feel hatred. Since he dared to frame his girl, he had to be prepared to be punished. "Who are you calling ugly? You're the ugly one." It was such a long speech, yet Yaoji was most concerned about these 2 words. Furthermore, these 3 words made her so angry that her beautiful face twisted a little. It was clear that women were indeed vain. "I'm not an ugly person, this is called cute, understand? Forget it, I won't argue with you about beauty and ugliness. Let everyone see my evidence." Song was too lazy to waste time on Yaoji and went straight to the point. After speaking, Song's little claws flicked in the air and a dazzling screen appeared in front of everyone. A woman appeared on the screen and there was a close-up of her face. It was Yaoji. On the screen, Yaoji sneakily found a well in the courtyard in the middle of the night and poured a few bags of white powder into it. After doing all this in a hurry, she ran back to her room with a trace of panic on her face. At this point, everyone understood and their gazes towards Yaoji became more and more unfriendly. This time, there was no need to say anything. They had seen it with their own eyes, so there was no need to ask. The evidence was conclusive. However, Yaoji still wanted to quibble and shouted madly, "You're wrong. You're framing me. This can't be real. This can't be real." After shouting, she pounced forward, wanting to grab Song. However, she was kicked away by Lung Ruoti's leg. With a loud bang, Yaoji crashed into a pillar in the meeting hall. She then fell limply to the ground and fainted again. This time, Lung Ruoxia had no intention of waking her up. "Do you have any more questions?" After Lung Ruoxia was done, she looked at the people present and asked calmly, "May I ask how you obtained the evidence?" One of the elders asked weakly. "Of course, I secretly took a picture of it," said Song Hui. At that time, it was dark and the wind was strong. In order to have a good effect, it had especially used the moonlight to flash. Otherwise, how could it have been so clear? Since you already know that Yaoji poisoned you, why didn't you show us the evidence earlier? Then all of us wouldn't have been poisoned. The elder who asked the question continued. However, his voice was very soft and there was a slight tremble in his voice. He looked at Song with a complicated expression. "Do I have that duty?" Azure said indifferently. In his heart, he scoffed at the elder's words. If these people had performed well, he would naturally be willing to remind them. But now, it didn't feel that it should do that. In other words, the narrow-minded it still didn't like these people. Even if they had already shown kindness to Nyo, in its eyes, that wasn't enough. Song Zibai's words made the elder who asked the question choke and speechless. Seeing this, Dong Fengyu sighed and said, "All right. Miss Lung was framed, and the real person who poisoned her was Yaoji. It's clear now. Does anyone have any doubts?" "Yes." Hearing this, everyone present nodded. The evidence was irrefutable. If they still had any doubts, wouldn't they be deliberately looking for trouble? At the same time, they were also glad that they were wise enough not to believe Yaoji's words and speak up for her. Otherwise, they would probably be in deep trouble. Then, let's discuss how to punish Yaoji. This time, he didn't plan to kill Yaoji. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to answer to Lung Ruoxia. Furthermore, he planned to deal with the previous matter together with the current one. He had to give Lung Ruoxue a satisfactory result. Your Excellency Dongfang Yu, I won't be joining you in discussing how to punish Yaoji. By the way, you can search her body. Goodbye. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue stood up and said. After she finished speaking, she carried Song and left the meeting hall without looking back. Dongfang Yu was dumbfounded when he saw Lung Ruoxue leaving just like that. He even forgot to call out to her. By the time he reacted, Lung Ruoxue had already disappeared. Then he started to feel troubled. Was Lung Ruoxue angry or not? She had left so easily. He was a little uncertain. When he looked at Dongfang Lin also shook his head at him, which made him even more depressed. Then he adjusted his mood and said to everyone present, "What do you all think? I don't think that Yaoji's only trying to frame others. She's clearly betraying us, betraying all of our trust in her. Therefore, we must punish her severely. Otherwise, we'll be letting down Miss Leng, who was wronged by her, and even more so, the families who were poisoned because of her selfishness." The first to speak was once again the elder who had been cooperative with Lung Ruoxue. After hearing his words, the other elders and sinecures all chimed in and strongly expressed that they must punish Yaoji severely. Otherwise, they would be letting down their own clansmen and would not be able to answer to Lung Ruoxue. Chapter 2172, White Whale of the Snowy Sea, 1. Currently, the underground city was jointly managed by a few powerful families. Among them, Dongfang Lin was respectfully called the underground city's city lord, and there were 2 deputy city lords as well as the elders' council. They basically formed the core of the underground city. Therefore, if there was a major incident in the underground city, the elders' council would usually be convened to show caution. Dongfang Lin had the absolute authority in the underground city. However, he chose to do things in a formal manner. This was also to prove to the public that the buried city was legitimate. Even though most of the people in the city had acknowledged Lung Ruoxue, the human heart was hard to fathom. Hence, he felt that it was better to put this matter out in the open. Furthermore, he believed that Lung Ruoxue would not do such a thing, but others might not do the same as him. If he believed in Lung Ruoxue and someone wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to do something, he was afraid that it would be impossible to guard against it. Hence, he threw the right to handle this matter to his elder brother while he watched the show from the side and tried to sound the drums at the same time. The facts proved that he had made the right decision. After hearing the elder's words, Dongfang Lin smiled and said, "Big brother, since the elders and sinecures have already come to a decision, I think we should let them discuss how to punish Yaoji first. Then, we'll decide what kind of punishment we should give her." Dongfang Yu nodded in agreement. At this moment, the unconscious Yaoji suddenly woke up. Then, everyone heard her shouting non-stop, "You can't wrong me! You can't wrong me!" Upon hearing this, Dongfang Yu could not help but frown. Then, he waved his hand and said impatiently, "Men! Take her away." With Dongfang Yu's order, 2 guards quickly entered the room. Then, they grabbed Yaoji's arms and forcefully dragged her out. "You guys can discuss her crime and the punishment she should receive." After Dongfang Yu finished speaking, he sighed softly and left the meeting hall in loneliness. When Dongfang Lin saw this, he quickly gave chase. At the same time, Lung Ruoxue carried Song back to her own residence. When they saw that Lung Ruoxue had returned, Uncle Long and the evildoer rushed forward and started to ask about what had happened. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue could only helplessly tell them what had happened. When Uncle Long heard this, he couldn't help but widen his eyes and say in disbelief, "That woman is really crazy. In order to frame you, she even harmed her own people. Oh my God! This kind of woman can't be left alive, or else, sooner or later, you'll be bitten by her. She's quite crazy, but the poison she used shouldn't be too heavy. Otherwise, Dongfang Lin and the others wouldn't let her off even if she died 100 times. Lung Ruoxue said, "I wonder what kind of punishment she will receive?" Uncle Long was a little curious. If it were him, he would kill this woman without hesitation. After all, if she could poison the people around him today, she could kill them tomorrow. And this kind of person, who did not have any morals in order to frame others, absolutely could not be allowed to die. I don't think he will die. Lung Ruoxue laughed coldly. She was very clear that even though that woman had poisoned everyone, some people might not be willing to let her die. At most, she would only be punished to give an explanation to the people here. That's a pity. We're definitely raising a tiger, Uncle Long said with a sigh. Even if they raise tigers, they're the ones raising them. It has nothing to do with us. We can't do anything about it. Lung Ruoxue replied emotionlessly. To be precise, they might not listen to them. Girl, it's good that you can think like this. When Song heard this, he praised. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue remembered to ask Song, "You scoundrel, since you already have evidence, why didn't you tell me? I don't know what that ugly woman wants to do, so how am I supposed to tell you? Besides, you didn't even ask." Azure said with a smile. "All right, you're right." Lung Ruoxue was helpless. Song had too many twisted logic and she was not his match. Girl, let's not worry about such a small matter. I know there's a snow sea not far from Black Fog City. There's a kind of fish in the sea called snowfish. It's called delicious. Let's catch a few to eat. Azure suggested. They'll just take it as a walk. Azure added. Snowfish? Don't I have the silver snowfish? Lung Ruoxue could not understand. Why did he have to go to the snow sea to catch a fish just to eat it? Moreover, she had never heard of the Sea of Snow. It's different. It was different. Although your silver snowfish is delicious, it does not belong to the divine realm after all and cannot be compared with snowfish. That snowfish can be considered as one of the oldest fish in the divine realm. It is very delicious. In short, you will know after you try it. I guarantee that you will not regret it. Azure sucked in a mouthful of saliva and said with a drooling face. Schwer, I've heard of this fish before, but they live under the ice of the deep sea and are harder to catch than trout, Uncle Long explained, but he was cut off before he could finish. What's so hard about catching it? I just don't like going into the sea. But, aren't you a whale? You should be more familiar with the bottom of the sea than us. With you around, there will definitely be no problem. Azure said with a faint smile, his face filled with anticipation. Seeing the hunger on Azure's face, Uncle Dragon couldn't bear to strike a blow at him. In fact, he really wanted to say that even though his true form was a dragon whale, it didn't mean that he would like such low-temperature seawater. I can't guarantee that. Uncle Long hesitated for a moment before telling the truth. It doesn't matter, let's go and try. If it really doesn't work, Nyo can still use her life spirit fire to dry the sea of snow, Song suggested. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she could not help but frown. She thought to herself, my natal divine flame isn't meant to dry the ocean. Moreover, how many natal divine flames do I need to dry an entire ocean? Even though she wasn't sure how big the sea of snow in Song's mouth was. Upon hearing this, Uncle Long nodded his head in agreement even though he had a helpless expression. He also hoped that he could leave this place temporarily and go out to relax. Otherwise, he would be annoyed by that group of people all day long. Schwer, let's go outside and relax. Uncle Long said to Lung Ruoxue after he agreed. All right then. Lung Ruoxue nodded. She didn't want to face those people anymore. If it wasn't for her master, she wouldn't have been so patient with them and put up with them. However, her patience was limited. Although those people had been doing better recently, it was still far from enough in her opinion. Perhaps they would be able to figure out what they should do after leaving for a few days. With this thought in mind, Lung Ruoxue didn't want to waste any more time. She bade farewell to the two guards who had become her loyal dogs and left the underground city with Tsong, the demon, and Uncle Long. Chapter 2173, White Whale of the Snowy Sea, 2. However, not long after she left the underground city, she realized that there was a tail behind her. That tail was one of the two guards. When the guard realized that he had been discovered, he coyly walked towards Lung Ruoxue and the rest. He laughed awkwardly and whispered, Miss, I'm afraid that you're not familiar with Black Fog City, so I'm here to be your guide. In other words, he was determined to follow them. Why are you alone? Lung Ruoxue was helpless. Ever since Dongfang Lin had given the two of them to her, she seemed to be unable to get rid of them. Furthermore, these two guards were brothers and had always been of one mind. Hence, she was very curious about the fact that she had only seen one person. Qin Dong went to deliver a letter to his lord. He will follow us later. The guard replied honestly, but there was still a hint of resentment on his face. This was because when Leng Ruoxue and the rest left the underground city, they had left the two of them behind. So, they were so sad. I see. Since you've already come out, then follow me. Leng Ruoxue sighed softly, as though she had accepted her fate. Yes. When the guard heard this, his face immediately bloomed into a smile. In fact, he knew very well that he couldn't outrun these people. However, he wasn't afraid of being discovered. In short, he was following them. The Sea of Snow was about 3 hours away from Black Fog City. Although it was very close to Black Fog City, it did not belong to Black Fog City. Of course, no human would be willing to occupy the place. When Dongfang Lin found out that Leng Ruoxue and the rest had left, they had already arrived at the snow sea that Song had mentioned. Looking at the vast expanse of white in front of her, Leng Ruoxue's forehead was filled with black lines. This was a sea of snow? Where was the sea? She only saw a tall snow mountain and a thick layer of ice that was as smooth as a mirror. Other than that, she didn't see any living thing. Leng Ruoxue shifted her gaze towards Qin Nan and asked, "Are you sure you didn't lead me the wrong way?" Qin Nan, who was the guard following them, immediately volunteered to lead the way when he heard that they were going to the Sea of Snow. He even said that he knew a shortcut, and that was why he brought them here. And here, she couldn't tell that this was the sea. Absolutely. I've been here once, and it's still fresh in my memory. Although we don't call this place the Snow Sea, it's indeed the Snow Sea you're looking for. Trust me. Qin Nan made a solemn vow. However, Leng Ruoxue was still skeptical of his words. Girl, this is indeed the Sea of Snow. He didn't take the wrong way. After Tsang spoke some fair words, it received a grateful gaze from Qin Nan. Then where is the sea? This was Leng Ruoxue's biggest question. It's under that thick layer of ice. Azure stretched out his little claw and pointed. When she heard this, Leng Ruoxue deliberately walked to the nearby ice layer and even jumped a few times on it. However, the thick ice layer did not move at all. However, the ice was really bright enough to shine on people. Leng Ruoxue pondered to herself before looking at Song. The Sea of Snow is under the layer of ice. How are we going to get down? Why are we going down? Azure blinked and asked in confusion. If we don't go down, how are we going to catch the snowfish? Leng Ruoxue was taken aback by Tsang's exceptionally innocent eyes. Then she asked as a matter of course. I should be the one going down. Uncle Long took the initiative to speak. Among the few of them, he was the most knowledgeable about the sea. Moreover, Azure had said that it would be easier to catch the fish with him around, so he felt that it was better to take the initiative. You don't need to go down, Azure said with a smile. Then how do we catch fish? Uncle Long was also confused. You just need to release a little pressure. There's a white whale living in the Snow Sea, so this is its territory, understand? Azure said with a smile. Understood. Uncle Long was sweating like a waterfall. Song was really too bad. He made him release his pressure. This was clearly to provoke him. At that time, the other party would definitely think that he was here to snatch his territory. In order to defend his sovereignty, that person would definitely rush up from the bottom of the sea in anger. At that time, that poor fellow would probably let them do whatever they wanted. Quickly start. We're not in a hurry to eat snowfish. Azure urged. All right then. Uncle Long replied. Immediately after, he released his pressure. Song reminded Leng Ruoxue and the others to stand further away so that they wouldn't be splashed by the seawater. Leng Ruoxue and the rest retreated to the foot of the tall snowy mountain. Then, Qin Nan took the initiative to start a fire. Song's words earlier had scared him silly. At the same time, it strengthened his belief that he must not offend that rabbit. Song was the worst rabbit he had ever seen. Suddenly, the wind and clouds surged. In an instant, the thick layer of ice scattered in all directions as a snow-white figure broke out of the ice. Following that, Lung Ruoxue and the rest saw a beautiful white whale floating in the air, its large, beautiful azure eyes staring at them in an unfriendly manner. The white whale was unbelievably beautiful. In her previous life, Lung Ruoxue had also observed the cute white whale up close. However, those that she had seen in her previous life were nothing compared to the white whale in front of her. After all, it was only a divine beast, and this white whale actually had the power of a reverent god. No wonder it had rushed out of the sea without hesitation when it was provoked by Uncle Long. "Damn it, you actually dare to come to my snow sea and cause trouble. I think you are really tired of living." White Whale, who had been staring at Uncle Long for a long time, said angrily. His beautiful blue eyes looked like they were about to shoot out flames, and two small flames flickered. However, they weren't surprised that the white whale was angry. They just didn't expect that the white whale was actually a female, and its voice was so gentle and pleasant to hear. It gave off a very comfortable and refreshing feeling. When Lung Ruoxue heard it speak, she had no doubt that it was also a beastie that was not what it looked like. Uncle Long didn't expect the white whale to be a female. After all, the beasts in the sea could only tell others their gender by their words. After knowing that the other party was a female, he was a little overwhelmed. He rarely attacked the mother beast, especially this time when he was the one who provoked it first, so he couldn't do it. For a moment, Uncle Long was in a dilemma. However, the white whale wasn't as gentlemanly as he was. After seeing that Uncle Long was a little distracted, the white whale was furious. That damned stinky man. He actually dared to look down on him? This was preposterous. The white whale was quite angry with Uncle Long's reaction after he found out about his gender. It must be known that it was also a beastie with a backbone. After working very hard to cultivate its strength to reverent god level, its self-esteem had also swelled even more. Especially when facing the opposite sex, the other party's performance would usually directly affect its mood, because it had always felt that it was not inferior to men. Chapter 2174, White Whale of the Snowy Sea, 3. Therefore, it really didn't like men looking at it like it was a weakling. After all, it also had the strength of a reverent god, and its strength was real, so it absolutely couldn't allow others to profane it. Thinking of this, the white whale made its move. Lung Ruoxue and the others only saw a beam of white light charging towards Uncle Long. Then they saw another beam of white light flying out as well. The two white figures collided in midair, creating intense sparks. Then, a huge object was sent flying. To be precise, they were sent flying with a kick. And the only person who could do this was Azure. After Tsang kicked the white whale away without any pity, he stood on top of it and stepped on its head with one leg. "Are you convinced?" Azure asked indifferently. "I'm convinced," the white whale said with great grief and indignation. Although it wanted to say that it was not convinced, the other party was giving it too much pressure, so it felt that it was better to be an obedient whale. Boo! The white whale's strong mental endurance had suffered an unprecedented blow. In front of the rabbit, it didn't even dare to have the slightest thought of resisting. Why was that? White whale couldn't understand. Wasn't the other party just a rabbit? Being kicked away by a rabbit was definitely the most embarrassing thing it had ever done. It really wanted to find a crack in the ice and hide in it. So, it did not want to live anymore. In fact, Qin Nan was also shocked. He rubbed his eyes hard, unable to believe what he had just seen. Although he knew that this rabbit was very powerful and had seen it kick away a divine emperor, he had never dreamed that it could also kick away such a big whale. This was truly unbelievable. How could a rabbit do such a thing with its short and small front and back legs? If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed it even if he was beaten to death. But the truth was right in front of his eyes, and he had no choice but to believe it. The only ones who could remain calm after witnessing the scene were Lung Ruoxue and the demon. Although Uncle Long knew Tsang's identity, he didn't expect Tsang to snatch food from his hands. So after the incident he still maintained a defensive posture, but he was obviously dumbfounded. Uncle Long only came back to his senses when he heard Song and the white whale tell it to go and catch some snowfish. At that moment, the white whale had already returned to the sea as if it had received a special pardon and disappeared without a trace. "Why you still standing there? Hurry up and help that idiot start a fire." Song Yu jumped onto Uncle Long's shoulder and reminded him. The idiot he was referring to was naturally Chin Nan, because Chin Nan had yet to start a fire. He was going to eat fish in a while, so the fire was rather important. "Oh." Uncle Long nodded and asked carefully, "Senior Azure, you let that white whale go. Aren't you afraid that it'll run away and hide on the shore? It dares? I've already left my mark on it. If it dares to escape, it'll make it wish it was dead," Azure said somewhat ruthlessly. Hearing this, Uncle Long stopped asking. Then he resigned himself to his fate and started a fire while Chin Nan assisted him. Not long after, the white whale returned. At the same time, a huge snowfish was thrown onto the ice, but the white whale remained in the sea, too afraid to come ashore. Seeing this, Song immediately shouted in displeasure, "Little White, why aren't you coming up? Don't be afraid. I'm not eating you." Hearing this, the white whale trembled a little, but it still went ashore obediently. It cleaned up the snowfish and handed it to Uncle Long. Lung Ruoshua looked at the 2-meter-long fish and was left speechless. This fish was a little too big. However, Song wasn't very satisfied with this fish and kept complaining that it was too small and wasn't enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. When Lung Ruoshua heard this, she couldn't help but wonder how big the gaps between his teeth were. At this moment, the white whale came to her side like a little wife and transformed into its mimicry form. It stayed there quietly. Lung Ruoshua looked at the small and cute white whale, and her heart itched. What a cute white whale. I really want to touch it. At the same time, Lung Ruokshua's fair hand had already touched white whale's smooth forehead. The skin on it was cool and soft, and it felt good to the touch. She simply couldn't bear to part with it. Thanks when the white whale was first touched by her, it instinctively wanted to fly into a rage. However, after receiving Tsong's glare and warning, it accepted its fate and let Lung Ruoshua do whatever she wanted. Who asked this human to give it such a friendly feeling? Otherwise, it wouldn't have chosen to stay by her side. It would just treat this as a reward for her. After all, it couldn't stay here for nothing. After the white whale had thought things through, it no longer felt that it was embarrassing to be touched by a human. It even took the initiative to cooperate with Lung Ruoshua and act cute. The white whale's performance also made Lung Ruoshua extremely happy. White whales were one of her favorite animals in her previous life. The beauty and elegance of white whales even gave her the idea of raising one. However, she gave up on that idea later. After all, she really did not want this beautiful elf to be raised in a pen. They belonged to the sea. However, although she didn't raise a white whale as long as she had time, she would definitely choose to go out to sea and get close to these beautiful elves. However, no matter how close the distance was, it couldn't be as close as it was now, so she was extremely excited at this time. It was only when the fragrance of the snowy fish wafted into her nose that Lung Ruoshua recalled that their objective for this trip was the snowy fish. However, to her, the snowy fish was obviously not as attractive as the white whale. The white whale also felt Lung Ruokshua's friendliness, so it became more and more relaxed. In the end, it decided to stick to Lung Ruoshua and followed her closely. Lung Ruoshua was happy, but this situation made Song He even more furious. Their Shuer had actually ignored their existence for the sake of a white whale. Really, Uncle can endure it, Aunt can't. Even though they knew that Shuer only treated the whale as a pet, they couldn't remain calm after being ignored, especially Tsong. It had always allowed Nyo to play the role of Lung Ruokshua's pet. But now, after having that dead whale, Nyo no longer carried it. This fact made it particularly angry. Could that cold dead whale be cuter than his fluffy and smooth self? Azure's heart felt indignant. Seeing Tsong's eyes shooting out fire, the demon laughed instead and said, "He deserves it. You asked for this." Although he was also angry that Shuer paid more attention to the whale than him, with Tsong's example, he felt that he was much calmer in the face of Beastie who was competing with him for the whale's favor. Don't tell me you're not angry? Azure raised a front paw and pointed at evildoer with a look of disbelief. I'm angry, but not as angry as you. The demon said indifferently. Is that so? Song Kai didn't believe Monster's words and looked at him with slight disdain before saying, I think we should be united against the outside world and get rid of this damn whale first. That makes sense. However, you were the one who summoned this whale, so you should naturally be the one to send it away. The demon said matter-of-factly, but he couldn't help but grumble in his heart. Damn it, if it wasn't for the fact that it wanted to eat the snowy fish, why would it attract this white whale to fight with me for Schwer? Therefore, he was also very dissatisfied with Song. Alright, when I've had enough of the snow fish, I'll make it roll back into the ocean. Song thought about it and said on purpose. Thinking of the delicious snow fish, he decided to endure the dead whale for a few days. You only know how to eat. Upon hearing this, the demon was even more furious. Why couldn't this guy forget about his food at this time? Could it be that it was the reincarnation of a pig? Food is the most important thing to the people. What's wrong with me knowing what to eat? Azure asked. You're not human. The demon reminded him calmly. You're the one who's inhuman. Your whole family is inhumane. Hearing the monster's suspicious words, Azure roared angrily. Schwer is also from my family, and you seem to have acknowledged her as your master, right? Evildoer said with a smile. After Schwer woke up, Song could not wait to recognize her as his master. Although Schwer had yet to fully merge with the god-protecting pagoda, their relationship was already set in stone and could not be changed. So what? What's wrong? Azure asked with wide eyes. That's why I said you're not human. The demon said indifferently. The consequences of Azure's anger were very serious. In an instant, the fur on its body stood up in anger, and the evildoer looked at it with an indifferent and provocative face. The battle between the two of them was triggered at the first touch. Why aren't you guys coming in? Suddenly, Lung Ruox's voice rang in their ears. The two of them who were at daggers drawn immediately turned from anger to laughter. The evildoer even hugged Song in a friendly manner and gently stroked its fur. He quickly said, We're coming. At least Schwer didn't really forget about him. At this moment, Lung Ruox's personal house was standing at the foot of the snowy mountain. The evildoer carried Song and followed Lung Ruoxue into the house. He found an opportunity to throw Song, who was struggling in his arms, out. Song took the opportunity to squeeze into Lung Ruox's arms. Then, he looked at the evildoer provocatively and used his hind leg to step on the white whale that was also in Lung Ruox's arms. The white whale, who was being bullied by Azure, was forced to give in to Azure's threats and didn't dare to resist. It could only look ahead with tears in its eyes. Chapter 2175. Punishment Outcome 1. In front of it was Uncle Long. However, when Uncle Long received the white whale's pitiful gaze, he turned his head uncomfortably and couldn't help but think, Don't look at me. I can't help you. Originally, he was enjoying the show, but who knew that this white whale would actually want to drag him into the water? This was not acceptable. He couldn't afford to offend the terrifying Song he just for a white whale. Otherwise, his good days would come to an end. Uncle Long, who was very self-aware, went back to his room to hide after he greeted Lung Ruoxue. So, I can't afford to offend you, but I can still hide, right? What's wrong with Uncle Long? You're back to your room so early? Lung Ruoxue was puzzled when she saw that Uncle Long was running faster than a rabbit. Usually, Uncle Long would not rest so early. Oh, I'm getting on in years, I should rest early. Song was very satisfied with Uncle Long's tactfulness. He even went all out to bully the white whale. Under Song's tyrannical abuse, the white whale could do nothing but hide. In the end, it could not bear it any longer and finally escaped from Lung Ruox's embrace. So, it was still more important to stay alive. Seeing the white whale leave her arms with a hidden bitterness, and hearing Song's words, Lung Ruox's forehead was filled with black lines. She thought to herself, Uncle Long is old? Can he be older than you? Then, she looked at Bai Jing with a wronged expression and said, "Little whale, are you despising me now? I'll be sad." "No, I don't despise you. It's just that I think it's time for me to go home. I don't really like living on land." When the white whale heard this, it hurriedly explained. It was rare for it to have a good impression of a human, and it did not want Leng Ruoxue to misunderstand. However, that rabbit made it very afraid. After weighing the two, it decisively abandoned Leng Ruoxue. "Oh, then you should quickly return to the sea. Remember to come and accompany me tomorrow." Leng Ruoxue felt a little better after hearing what the white whale said. She then reminded him. "Also, remember to catch a few more snowfish tomorrow. One is not enough." Azure agreed. Yes, I know." The white whale nodded and then quickly teleported away. It didn't want to stay here any longer. The moment the white whale left, Leng Ruoxue immediately became listless. When Song and Demon saw this, they were extremely worried. The man and beast looked at each other, then Song said, "Girl, if you really can't bear to part with it, then he'll just catch it and bring it back. Don't. Let it be. It belongs to the sea." Leng Ruoxue said hurriedly. Then, she carried Song and pulled Demon back to her room. The next day, Leng Ruoxue, Demon, and Song had just walked out of the room when they noticed that there were a few more people in the courtyard. She did not find it strange to see Qin Dong, but why were Dongfang Lin and Dongfang Yu here? "What are you guys doing here?" Leng Ruoxue looked at Dongfang Lin and asked. "Shui, you're really disloyal. How could you leave us behind and leave on your own?" When Dongfang Lin heard Leng Ruoxue's words, he grumbled with a face full of hidden bitterness. The pitiful look on his face was no different from that of a resentful husband. "What else? I have to bring you guys along when I'm out on a trip?" Leng Ruoxue raised her brows and asked calmly. "Thanks. Then you should at least let us know." Dongfang Lin timidly reminded. "Didn't I ask Qin Dong to tell you guys?" Leng Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes and said with an innocent look. "How can that be the same?" Dongfang Lin said with some dissatisfaction. "But in my opinion, it's the same. At least I didn't leave without saying goodbye." Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. "You still want to leave without saying goodbye?" Dongfang Lin asked in return. "I did have that plan, but Qin Dong and Qin Nen have been following me like my shadow. It's not easy for me to leave without saying goodbye, so I could only ask them to pass on a message for me." Leng Ruoxue answered honestly. "You guys came here just to question us?" At this time, the evildoer who was listening to their conversation interrupted with a slight displeasure. "Not an interrogation. I'm not questioning you, I'm just concerned." Dongfang Lin was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. "I thought you were here to question me," the demon said coldly. His tone was somewhat unfriendly. "It definitely isn't." Dongfang Lin wanted to cry but had no tears. He didn't offend this guy, did he? Why did they have to find trouble with me? In fact, he was clearly acting coquettishly, but it was not too obvious. As a man, he could not say that he was acting coquettishly. However, he believed that if he really said that, the end would be worse than now. "It's good that you're not." The demon let him go out of goodwill. In fact, he was giving Schwerer face. After all, this guy would be following Schwerer in the future. Hearing this, Dongfang Lin finally heaved a sigh of relief. He had passed the test. Forget it, it was better for him not to ask about Leng Ruoxue and the others leaving. Otherwise, he might be dragged into it again. With that in mind, Dongfang Lin immediately changed the topic. "The environment here is not bad. Since you guys came out to relax, count me in. This is a world of ice and snow. Where do you think the environment is good? In my opinion, there's not a single decent place in Black Fog City and its surroundings." Dongfang Lin's words were once again refuted by the demon. When Dongfang Lin heard that the demon seemed to be looking for trouble, he was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. So, could it be that the more you say, the more mistakes you make? He looked at his big brother. He didn't say a word, so he wasn't attacked. With this thought in mind, he simply closed his mouth and didn't say anything. Looking at the depressed Dongfang Lin, Leng Ruoxue laughed to herself. Of course, she knew why the evildoer was treating Dongfang Lin this way. It was because he was venting his anger on him. In reality, Dongfang Lin was really innocent. However, she knew that the evildoer was trying to help her vent her anger, so she would not pity Dongfang Lin. After thinking for a while, she still said very kindly, "I don't object to you coming out to relax. But what about your underground city if you leave? Aren't there still matters that need your attention?" The matter she was talking about was naturally Yaoji's matter. There's already a conclusion to that matter. Dongfang Lin glanced at Leng Ruoxue and said gloomily, "What?" Leng Ruoxue could tell that something was wrong with Dongfang Lin's emotions. She could not help but feel curious. Had he suffered a blow? However, she was quite surprised that the matter could come to a conclusion so quickly. After all, she knew very well that it was very troublesome for a major power to make a decision. There were too many aspects to consider. There's irrefutable evidence that Yaoji poisoned her. Hence, after some discussion, she's been sentenced to life imprisonment. Dongfang Lin explained. "Is this the only way?" Leng Ruoxue asked in disbelief. Wasn't this sentence a little too light? To a god, life imprisonment was not much different from closed-door cultivation. They would neither suffer nor suffer, and there might even be someone waiting on them. As such, she really didn't know if Yaoji had gone to receive her punishment or to enjoy life. Weren't they afraid that someone would follow their example in the future? Chapter 2176, Punishment Outcome, 2. According to her crime, her cultivation should have been crippled and then expelled from Black Fog City. However, Yaoji's identity is too sensitive. If we expel her, we're afraid that the situation in Black Fog City will be exposed, so we changed it to life imprisonment. As for her cultivation, the Elders' Council thinks that she's an old man of the Godlord's estate after all and has contributed to the Godlord's estate, so we won't cripple her cultivation, but life imprisonment is inevitable. Otherwise, we won't be able to explain it to our clansmen. Dongfang Lin continued. As he spoke, he couldn't help but sigh. In fact, he had agreed to punish Yaoji severely. Unfortunately, he didn't expect that an elder would plead for her when they were discussing the punishment. As a result, they came to such a conclusion. As for his big brother, although he was very disappointed in Yaoji, he still agreed to this decision in the end for Uncle Lian's sake. Since his big brother had agreed, he could only nod. Although he was very dissatisfied with this decision, he had to consider his big brother's feelings. In his opinion, Yaoji shouldn't be able to cause any big waves on her own, so he just let them be. It seems that years of living in seclusion and being imprisoned have made you soft-hearted. Leng Ruoxue said coldly. She then continued, although you've sentenced Yaoji, you seem to have forgotten that you still have to explain to me. Now, I want to know how you plan to explain it to me? Leng Ruoxue's words made Dongfang Lin smile wryly. When the Elders' Council had convicted Yaoji, they had indeed forgotten to count Leng Ruoxue in. The reason why he and his big brother had come here, other than to see if Leng Ruoxue was really angry, was to ask for her opinion. I don't know what Xue Er's request is, but as long as it's within my capabilities, I'll definitely satisfy it. Dongfang Lin promised. In that case, give me Yaoji. Leng Ruoxue said with a faint smile. She didn't want to keep a time bomb by her side. In her opinion, that woman was too dangerous. No problem. Dongfang Lin agreed without hesitation. Although Yaoji was charged with life imprisonment, that was only for the people of the underground city. As for Xue, of course, it had to be counted separately. He was very proud of his own thoughts. I wonder how Miss Leng plans to deal with Yaoji? Dongfang Yu suddenly asked. He didn't want to let Yaoji off so easily before, but many people thought that it was only because of her selfishness and that her crime didn't deserve death. Moreover, Uncle Lian, who he valued more, couldn't bear to cripple Yaoji and felt that locking her up again was already an unbearable torture for people like them who yearned for the light. He thought about it and felt that Uncle Lian's words made some sense. After all, the so-called living a life worse than death was nothing more than this. Therefore, he agreed to Yaoji's punishment. After deciding on this matter, he remembered that he still had to give Leng Ruoxue an explanation. At that time, Lung Ruoxue had already left Black Fog City. Hence, he and Lin Fan had chased after her. Lung Ruoxue's current reaction was within his expectations. In reality, handing Yaoji over to Lung Ruoxue was the best choice for him. At least, he wouldn't have to worry about Yaoji anymore. After all, he didn't want to let Yaoji off. However, he couldn't bear to reject the plea of someone who had once gone through thick and thin with him. However, he still wanted to know how Lung Ruoxue was going to deal with Yaoji. I haven't decided yet, but I'll definitely not be soft-hearted towards her. It's useless no matter which one of you pleads for her. Lung Ruoxue warned. She knew that these people were unreliable. In the end, she would have to punish Yaoji herself. This fact made her quite depressed. Don't worry. We won't plead for her, right? Big brother. After Dongfang Lin heard what Lung Ruoxue had to say, he quickly replied. He even kept winking at his big brother, asking him to quickly make his stance clear. Dongfang Yu saw that Dongfang Lin's eyes were about to twitch from all the blinking, so he helplessly said, Yes. We won't plead on her behalf, but I hope that this matter can be kept a secret. After all, she has been through so many hardships with us for so many years, and there are still people who can't bear to see her suffer. So, I don't want anyone to know about this. Thanks, no problem. Lung Ruoxue agreed and then said to the two of them, Go back and bring that woman to me. Swear, we've only just arrived. Are you already chasing us away? Lung Ruoxue's words made Dongfang Lin so depressed that he wanted to bang his head against the wall. This was too much. A long night is fraught with dreams. Who knows what will happen if we drag this on? Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. Hearing this, Dongfang Lin sighed heavily before saying, AI. Alright. However, you have to leave some snow fish for me. Those things are not easy to catch. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry. Lung Ruoxue urged, but she couldn't help but think in her heart, this glutton, why does he only know how to eat? Back then, because of a plate of hot and sour potato, he had a huge debt. It seemed that he had not learned his lesson. We're going. Dongfang Lin, who had been shooed away, pulled his big brother away with a gloomy expression and turned around to leave. After they left, Azure quickly said hatefully, Girl, let's quickly go eat the snow fish. We must eat all the snow fish and leave nothing for them. Damn it, he dared to have designs on the snow fish. He really didn't want to live. Song hated people snatching food from his mouth the most in his life. Therefore, Dongfang Lin could be considered to have provoked him. After hearing Song's words, Lung Ruoxue stroked its fur and smiled helplessly. Well, let's go and eat snow fish. The snowy fish today was even bigger than the one from yesterday. Furthermore, White Whale and Uncle Long had already cleaned up the fish. Qin Nan and his brother each held a large piece of snow-white fish in their hands and were roasting it over the fire. When they saw them coming out, Qin Nan hurriedly brought a piece of snowfish that had been roasted to Lung Ruoxue. However, Song snatched it away and glared at Qin Nan before passing the fish in his claws to Lung Ruoxue. Girl, quickly eat, it's still hot. It was just roasted. Azure said with a fawning expression. When Qin Nan saw it, he felt wronged. That's what I roasted. This detestable rabbit had actually taken the fruits of his labor and used it to please the young lady. This was really too much. This opportunity should be his. However, it was snatched away by a rabbit. And he actually dared to be angry but did not dare to say anything. He even had to maintain a smile. What the hell was this? Qin Nan was so aggrieved that he was on the verge of tears. Lung Ruoxue glanced at Qin Nan, then at Song and said, You eat first. This is what you want to eat the most. Then I won't be polite. I'll personally roast a piece of snowy fish for you to try later. Song nodded. In truth, he was thinking that it was right for Nyo not to eat. Otherwise, he would definitely find a chance to deal with that kid Qin Nan. To dare to please Nyo in front of it, he really was tired of living. Chapter 2177. Punishment Outcome 3. In terms of possessiveness towards Lung Ruoxue, he was not inferior to the evildoer. However, his feelings towards Lung Ruoxue were slightly different from the evildoeress. his main purpose was to fight for love and wanted Schwer to dote on him and pamper him. Therefore, anyone who wanted to fight for love with him, regardless of gender, would be his enemy. On the other hand, the evildoer would be hostile towards all members of the opposite sex. Of course, there was no distinction between male and female beasts. Can the fish you roast be eaten? Lung Ruoshua heard Song's words and asked worriedly. Of course. Girl, I'm a beastie who can go to the hall and go out of the kitchen. With me, you can go and be happy. How is it, someone is far worse than me? Needless to say, the someone it was referring to was naturally a demon. When evildoer heard Song's words, he retorted, You think you're the only one who can cook? Which person or beast besides Schwer doesn't know how to cook? Can you make it? After listening to evildoer's words, Azure asked with a faint smile. Of course. I know how to do it too, but I don't know much. Evildoer braced himself and said, his voice getting softer and softer. When Song heard this, he laughed proudly. Then what do you know? How about we compete? Azure suggested. How do we compete? The demon's heart thumped, and a bad premonition welled up in his heart. Well, each use the snowfish to make 3 dishes and let them be the judges. The losing side will have to serve the winner for half a year. How about it? Azure asked. All right. The evildoer looked at Uncle Long, then turned his gaze to the Chin brothers and the white whale. Finally, it was Schwer's turn. This was a matter of face, and if he were to reject the offer, it would be rather embarrassing. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well all of a sudden, so I'm afraid I can't be your judge. I'll go back to my room to rest. Uncle Long blushed and said awkwardly. After that, he left the place as if he was running for his life, and he took the confused white whale with him. When the Chin brothers saw this, they quickly found an excuse and left. They didn't even give Evil Demon and Song the chance to stop them before they disappeared. Seeing this, Lung Ruoshua could not help but snicker in her heart. Uncle Long and the others were not that stupid. These 2 guys weren't to be trifled with, and they wouldn't be able to bear the consequences of offending anyone. Would they do such a stupid thing? As for her, she had to stand firmly on the evildoer's side. Who asked the evildoer to be her fiancé? There's only the 3 of us here. Do you still want to compete? Lung Ruoshua asked with a smile. No more competition, Azure said gloomily. At the crucial moment, Nyo would definitely value sex over it, so it wasn't that stupid. When the demon heard that there was no need to compete, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he took the initiative to pick up a piece of fish and roast it. Seeing this, Song didn't want to be outdone and also picked up a piece of fish to roast. It wasn't that Lung Ruoshua didn't have a headache when she saw the 2 of them comparing themselves to each other. However, when she saw the small and exquisite Song holding a piece of fish that was many times bigger than its own body and roasting it, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. This was a rather comical scene. Song heard the laughter and knew that he had pleased Lung Ruoshua. Hence, he put in even more effort in roasting the fish. However, when the fish was done, Lung Ruoshua looked at the 2 large pieces of fish that were placed in front of her and her headache became even worse. Was she going to die from overeating? I can't eat that much. Lung Ruoshua said with a troubled expression. Then eat mine. The man and beast said in unison. I'll roast it myself. With that, Lung Ruoshua cut a small piece of fish and placed it on the fire to roast without looking at the 2 of them. When Lung Ruosh's fish was done roasting and she was about to eat it, she felt 2 resentful gazes on her. Instantly, she felt as if there was a dagger on her back. However, she still braced herself and lowered her head to eat. This fish feast was the most difficult meal Lung Ruoshua had in the past 2 days. After she finished eating, she hurriedly bade farewell to the man and beast before hiding in her room. However, even if she could hide from him, she couldn't hide from him forever. Moreover, she and the demon lived in the same room, and Song was even more loathed in the room, acting as the big light bulb between the 2. So, not long after she returned to her room, the 2 guys who were like resentful husbands also came back. Then, the 2 humans and 1 beast stared at each other. After a long time. There was a sudden knock on the door. The moment Lung Ruoshua heard the sound, She immediately ran out to open the door as if she had received a special pardon. Uncle Long was standing outside the door. "Little girl, Dong Fong Lin is back." Uncle Long looked at Leng Ruoxue with sympathy. So fast. Leng Ruoxue did not expect Dong Fong Lin to be so efficient. He had already made a round trip before she even arrived. Something seems to have happened," Uncle Long said in a low voice. Upon hearing this, Leng Ruoxue quickly followed Uncle Long to meet Dong Fong Lin. Evil Demon and Song saw that they had been abandoned by Shuer again, so they could only follow them. It was only after seeing Dong Fong Lin that Leng Ruoxue learned from him that Yaoji had disappeared. How could it have disappeared? Leng Ruoxue asked with a puzzled look. From what she knew, the underground city's defenses were pretty good. There should be people watching over Yaoji. Why had she disappeared? Was there a ghost? A mole? She knocked out the guard who was watching her and escaped. Dong Fong Lin sighed. No one noticed? Leng Ruoxue asked in disbelief. She had not expected that woman to be so remarkable. She was already imprisoned, yet she was still able to escape so quickly. No, I didn't. She must have changed her appearance, and it was the time of the shift change, so the investigation was not strict, which gave her the opportunity to escape. Before I came, I had already sent guards to Black Fog City to look for news of her. I believe that she has not left the city yet. Dong Fong Lin replied honestly. You must not let her leave Black Fog City. You should know what it will mean if she leaves. If she falls into the hands of Wu Xian, it's hard to guarantee that she won't bear a grudge against us and betray the Black Fog City. Leng Ruoxue reminded him with a serious expression. I understand. Dong Fong Lin nodded. In addition, you should quickly go back and strengthen the security of Black Fog City. It's better to be safe than sorry. Don't be flustered when something really happens. Leng Ruoxue continued. Okay, you'll go back now. Shuer, are you going back with me? Dong Fong Lin asked with anticipation. We're not going back. We haven't stayed here long enough. Hearing these words, Azure rushed to say. It didn't want Nyo to go back and be subjected to other people's expressions. Those people had dealt with Yaoji's problem unhappily, so it was determined not to let Nyo go back. Yeah, it's better if we don't go back first. Yaoji has escaped, and I don't want to give some people an excuse to attack us. Leng Ruoxue said indifferently. Although Yaoji's escape had nothing to do with them, she was afraid that someone would take their anger out on them. Why should she go back and receive such treatment? Shuer, actually, most people are already willing to acknowledge you. Dong Fong Lin said. Even though he was slightly disappointed that Leng Ruoxue was unwilling to return, he could understand her thoughts. However, he still wanted to let Leng Ruoxue know the attitude of the people of Black Fog City towards her. So what? They are not of the same mind as me, so I won't force them to accept me, but they shouldn't force me either. Leng Ruoxue said indifferently. They wouldn't dare. Azure said with a domineering expression. When Dong Fong Lin heard Song's words, he could only sigh. However, he could not deny that Song was right. Shuer, since you don't want to go back for the time being, I'll come and see you when I have time. Dong Fong Lin said after some thought. After he finished speaking, he left in a hurry. In the days that followed, Dong Fong Lin would visit Leng Ruoxue and the others every 3 to 5 days. He would also tell them about the situation in the underground city. However, Yaoji, who he had sent people to look for, had disappeared without a trace. During this period of time, Leng Ruoxue and the rest lived a carefree and free life. Even though Tsang, Evildoer, and White Whale would fight for her favor from time to time, they had also brought Leng Ruoxue a lot of joy. Not only was there good food in the snowy sea, but there were also many treasures at the bottom of the sea. In order to please her, the White Whale had brought up many good things from the deep sea for her. When Dong Fong Linchu saw the good things that could only be found in the deep sea, her eyes almost popped out. He had to admit that he was jealous. Why was this girl's luck so good? After all, he had lived here for many years and could be considered to be neighbors with the White Whale. He knew the White Whale's temperament very well. Therefore, he could not understand why the White Whale, which treated humans so coldly, would treat Leng Ruoxue so differently. He couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore and had to ask the white whale. The answer he got was that it was happy. Alright. When it was happy, it paddled up all the good things in the deep sea and gave them to Shwer, that little girl. When it was happy, it should give him some too. When he expressed his thoughts to the white whale, he was deeply despised by the white whale. Then, the white whale said to him very directly, "I'm sorry, I hate humans." Could it be that Shwer was not a human? When Dongfang Lin heard this, he really wanted to knock his head into tofu. This was too much of a bully. However, as time passed, he gradually calmed down. However, he spent more time in the snow sea. Chapter 2178. A shocking turn of events. 1. Dongfang Yu and Uncle Lien would also come over to take a look from time to time. However, when they mentioned recognizing Leng Ruoxue as their master and calling her little master, Leng Ruoxue would change the topic. The two of them were rather depressed and helpless about this. After many unsuccessful attempts to express their intentions, one afternoon, Dongfang Yu and Uncle Lien finally trapped Leng Ruoxue in the room. In reality, ever since they had revealed the slightest clue, Leng Ruoxue had been looking for all sorts of excuses to hide from the two of them. Now that they had finally caught Leng Ruoxue, the two of them were instantly filled with excitement. However, before the two of them could speak, Leng Ruoxue spoke first. "I know you want to be direct, but I don't see your sincerity, so there's no need to talk about this matter. It's more pleasing to the ear for you to call me Miss Leng." "Our sincerity? Are we not sincere enough? We've come here several times, but you're always hiding." Uncle Lien grumbled with a face full of hidden bitterness. He would even steal glances at Leng Ruoxue from time to time, trying to act pitiful to gain Leng Ruoxue's sympathy. Unfortunately, his plan failed. "You guys didn't think that I should meet you with tears of gratitude just because you came here, did you?" Leng Ruoxue asked with a half-smile. She continued, "You were the ones who picked on me and refused to acknowledge me. Now you want to acknowledge me again. Do you think I have no status and can do whatever you want to me?" The moment Leng Ruoxue finished speaking, Uncle Lien and Dongfang Yu immediately felt two cold gazes as sharp as ice daggers shooting straight at them. Their hearts skipped a beat. They didn't need to look to know whose gaze it was. Uncle Lien quickly explained, "I didn't mean it that way, you misunderstood. What I mean is, we're already very sincere. If you're still dissatisfied with us, you can tell us and we'll definitely change." After saying this, Uncle Lien was so nervous that he was sweating profusely. His heart was beating like a drum. This should be called reaping what you sow, right? He had saved them back then, so it would have been great if they had recognized him as their master. But now, she was begging him and he didn't even care. This was retribution. It was definitely retribution. Uncle Lien wanted to cry himself to death, if this could make the other party agree to their loyalty. It was a pity that Leng Ruoxue was obviously not someone who would compromise and like to put herself in a difficult position. Back then she had already tolerated their actions. Now that things had come to this, how could she continue to suffer? It was impossible to think about it. Leng Ruoxue didn't think that she was that easy to talk to either. In fact, she was already giving her master face by not making things difficult for them. Change. "You guys are good, you don't need to change anything." Uncle Lien's words made Leng Ruoxue fall silent for a moment before she spoke. In these few short minutes, Uncle Lien felt as if he was being tortured. It was extremely unbearable. To be honest, the time he was imprisoned by fog was not as unbearable as the time he was just now. The cold sweat on his forehead increased. Upon hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, Uncle Lien could not hide his disappointment. However, he continued to ask, "I know we have a lot of problems, but as long as you're willing to make us pledge our loyalty, we'll change. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied with the changes. So, please give us a chance." After Uncle Lien finished speaking, he looked at Leng Ruoxue with tears in his eyes. This made Leng Ruoxue extremely speechless. Who taught him this? Could it be Dongfang Lin? "It's not impossible for Nyo to accept you." All of a sudden, the slightly disgruntled Song spoke. Hearing this, Uncle Lien's spirits rose again. As long as you hand over Yaoji, you'll be responsible for convincing Nyo to accept you. How about it? That's not a high requirement, is it? Song said with a smile, as if he had done a great deed. That was called pride. Thanks, however, when Uncle Lien heard this, he became listless again. He wanted to hand Yaoji over to them, but he had to find her first. The divine realm was so big that finding a person was harder than finding a needle in a haystack. They had been searching for a while, but they couldn't find a single trace of Yaoji. Although he didn't dare to say that the other party was deliberately making things difficult for him, he really couldn't hand her over now. He really regretted pleading for Yaoji back then. If he had crippled her cultivation earlier, would she have been able to escape? However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. No matter how regretful he was, he couldn't change the fact that Yaoji had escaped. At the thought of this, Uncle Lien quickly discussed, "We've been looking for Yaoji as well. I promise that as soon as I find her, I'll send her to you immediately and you can do whatever you want with her. Is that okay? Then we'll talk about it after you've found her. We can afford to wait, there's no hurry." Song crossed his two front claws in front of his chest as he indifferently said, "You guys aren't worried? Of course you're not in a hurry." However, they were anxious. What if they couldn't find Yaoji after hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years? Wouldn't they never be able to recognize her as their master? Furthermore, Lung Ruoxue was already a divine emperor, one that could even make a hierarch admit defeat. With such terrifying potential, they naturally hoped that the relationship between the two of them could be established as soon as possible. Otherwise, once Lung Ruoxue advanced to the hierarch realm, they would not be needed anymore. By then, they would be in an awkward situation. Apart from the above reasons, which could be considered as their own selfish motives, they also sincerely felt that Lung Ruoxue could lead them to avenge Master Yu. Especially after they had witnessed Lung Ruoxue's terrifying combat power, their thoughts became even stronger. He couldn't even block it. However, no matter what they said, the other party refused to relent. This fact made Uncle Lien feel rather conflicted. Alright, they asked for this. Who asked them to look at people with colored glasses and think that women can't achieve great things? But in fact, they couldn't be completely blamed, right? How could they have known that Lung Ruoxue was not the weak woman that she looked on the surface? She was the valiant female war god. And now that they knew, it was too late. Now, they wanted to recognize him as their master, but he didn't seem willing to accept them. Uncle Lien had lived for so long, and other than the days when he was imprisoned by fog, he had never been treated like this. One must know that he was once an amazing figure. When he followed Master Yu, he was even more glorious. No one dared to show him any face. But perhaps it was God's punishment for him. Now, he had tasted all kinds of grievances, and they were given to him by a little girl. He had no other choice but to accept it, because they were the ones who had caused this. He could not blame anyone else. Can we acknowledge her as our master first? Then, after we find Yaoji, we'll bring her to you? Uncle Lien asked carefully after a long bout of self-pity. Chapter 2179. A shocking turn of events. 2. Didn't you guys already acknowledge Nyo? Since that's the case, why do you need to recognize me as your master again? Azure said after some thought. That's different. Uncle Lien said anxiously. They had acknowledged the little girl, but the little girl still held a grudge against them and had not acknowledged them yet. In my opinion, it's all the same. Azure said calmly. Then, it continued, actually, master recognition is just a formality. As long as you have a girl in your heart, it's the same. It didn't have to recognize him as its master. Am I right? It was wrong. Uncle Lien couldn't help but roar in his heart. To the people of the divine realm, if they wanted to be loyal to someone, recognizing a master was the best way. Moreover, only after recognizing a master could they become a trusted subordinate. Otherwise, they would forever be separated from their master, no different from ordinary followers. Thus, this master, they had to recognize. Only by acknowledging a master can we show our sincerity. Uncle Lien said after making up some words. I see. Then you'd better be a member of the border. We know how loyal you are. When we capture Yaoji, well, consider you recognizing us as your master. Be good. Let's go back first. After saying all that, Azure gave the order to chase them away. Seeing that they were unwilling to leave, he simply reached out with his claws. 2 silver lights flew up and down, and the 2 men, who weighed almost 300 pounds, flew out like snowflakes. Seeing Tsang like this, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but hug it in her arms. She helplessly nodded its little head and said, "You're really naughty." Hee hee. Azure just laughed foolishly and didn't explain. The demon couldn't stand it anymore and walked forward, throwing Tsang out of Lung Ruoxue's arms. He then pulled Lung Ruoxue into his embrace and said, "Shue-er, I can do it too. It's just that annoying fellow got there first." To be more precise, it was Shue-er who told him to keep a low profile and not make a move. Otherwise, if his identity was exposed, it might scare others. So, he had to endure it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given that annoying fellow Tsang the chance to show off. "I know." Lung Ruoxue smiled as she patted the evildoer's head to comfort him. As for the evildoer who had his head touched like a puppy, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with Lung Ruoxue's actions at all. Instead, he revealed an expression of enjoyment and received a disdainful gaze. However, he completely ignored it. After that, the man and the beast started to fight for Lung Ruoxue's attention. They chased after each other, occasionally peeking at Lung Ruoxue out of the corner of their eyes. Seeing that she was smiling as she watched them play around, it was clear that her mood was not affected by a certain person. The human and beast instantly exchanged a look of tacit understanding. This was because this was the method they had discussed to change Shue-er's target. It was only at times like this that they would cooperate so well. In the garden, Uncle Long was drinking tea and chatting with Dongfang Lin. As they chatted, the topic of their conversation somehow came to Dongfang Yu and Uncle Lien. Thanks then he heard Uncle Long's evil smile. "Your big brother and that Uncle Lien are going to be in trouble." Shue was not that easy to talk to. She usually didn't have a good impression of people who didn't recognize her at first sight. It's already not easy to be willing to give them a good face. According to what you're saying, they're going to return empty-handed again? Dongfang Lin couldn't help but ask with his eyes wide open. Yes, that's a must. My little girl isn't that worthless. If others want her, they can take her. If they don't want her, they can trample on her. At the mention of this, Uncle Long couldn't sympathize with Dongfang Yu and the others. Otherwise, with his admiration for Dongfang Yu, he might even help them plead for mercy. Unfortunately, they had lost this great opportunity from the start. Now, they knew how to be passive, right? It was too late. Don't you also think that they have no hope, so you don't want to stand out because of this matter? Don't act like you don't know anything in front of me. You're a famous old fox in the divine realm. Then, Uncle Long looked at Dongfang Lin with disdain. I didn't tea. Dongfang Lin's face was slightly red as he explained in a low voice. Uncle Long's words and the look in Uncle Long's eyes made him feel extremely embarrassed. In fact, he really didn't want to get involved in this mess because he didn't think that they would be able to do it. However, now that Uncle Long had said it so bluntly, he was a little embarrassed. Uncle Long laughed heartily as he looked at Dongfang Lin's tiny appearance. At this moment, the two of them suddenly felt a strong gust of wind. Then, they saw 2 huge spheres flying toward them and flew past them with a bang. Bang. After 2 loud bangs, the 2 balls smashed into the garden's wall and fell. What was going on? The 2 people who were secretly raising their vigilance and preparing for battle were both stunned by this scene. However, the 2 of them immediately realized that this was Shue-er's personal room, so there shouldn't be any enemy attacks. Furthermore, those who could enter this room were all people they knew. At the thought of this, the 2 of them looked at each other and thought to themselves that they were acquaintances. With this thought in mind, the 2 of them quickly ran towards the 2 balls that had fallen on the ground of the garden. Before they could get close, the 2 balls stood up on their own. "Be big brother." Dongfang Lin stammered when he saw this. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that his big brother would appear in such a position. Was he kicked out by someone? Uncle Long couldn't help but facepalm. Although he knew that the two of them wouldn't end up well, he didn't expect them to be so miserable. At this time, Dong Fengyu and Uncle Lian's clothes were all slanted and hanging on their bodies. They were in danger of being exposed at any time. Moreover, their faces were covered with blue and purple claw marks. Needless to say, this was definitely the work of Senior Tsang. As he admired the two's new style, Uncle Long suddenly remembered that there was a female beast here. He immediately ran back to where he had been sitting and covered the white whale's eyes, which was looking curiously at Dong Fengyu and Uncle Lian. The white whale struggled to break free, but Uncle Dragon had no choice but to hold it tightly in his arms. "It's not suitable for children. Release me. Let me go. You old whale, I want to see handsome men. I want to see naked men." Bai Jing struggled and shouted loudly. Hearing this, Dong Fengyu and Uncle Lian's old faces were so red that it looked like blood was going to drip out. Even Dong Fonglin felt a little uncomfortable. One of the people who was going to be seen was his big brother. Also, how come he never knew that this cute little whale had become so lecherous? It had been acting normal all along. Why did he suddenly turn into a whale? Dong Fonglin really couldn't get used to seeing it like this. In fact, the white whale wasn't too lecherous. It was just that its curiosity was too strong, and it had been taught badly by Tsang. Because Tsang had told it that if it could find a way to see the man's naked body, it would be rewarded. So, the white whale kept this matter in mind. Chapter 2180. A Shocking Change, 3. But in fact, the naked man that Tsang wanted it to see was a demon, not any random man. However, at that time, Tsang couldn't be too direct and could only hint. Otherwise, it was afraid that this stupid white whale would mess things up and Yo would blame it. Therefore, for its own safety, it had to say it vaguely. However, this whale was really too naive. It actually thought that it would be fine to see any man's naked body. Thus, as soon as it saw an opportunity, it thought about its reward. Of course, Uncle Long and the others didn't know what the white whale was thinking, nor did they know what was going on between it and Azure. Seeing the white whale struggling in his arms, Uncle Dragon had no choice but to hold it tightly. He couldn't let this innocent child become a perverted woman. However, the white whale's skin was cold and smooth. Uncle Dragon's carelessness allowed the white whale to break free. Then, Uncle Long watched as the white whale charged toward Dong Fengyu and Uncle Lian at the speed of light. With a light flick of its mimic tail, the cloth on their bodies immediately fell to the ground. Then there was a caw-caw sound. With two sounds and a flash of white light, Dong Fengyu and Uncle Lian were gloriously slapped off their naked bodies. Everyone present was dumbfounded by this turn of events. They did not return to their senses for a long time, only widening their eyes in disbelief and standing in a daze on the spot. This was especially so for Dong Fengyu and Uncle Lian, who had been taken naked. The two of them were completely petrified, even forgetting that they were unsightly. After the white whale obtained the evidence it thought of, it immediately teleported away. After a long time, Uncle Long was the first to come back to his senses, but he didn't know how to deal with this matter, so he could only continue to stand there stupidly. After a while, the overly shocked Dong Fonglin also regained his senses. Then he quickly retrieved two male outfits from his storage ring and draped them over the two people who were still in a daze. This was really a house leaking out of a corner and the rain pouring at night. Dong Fonglin sympathized with his brother and Uncle Lian. It had been so long, and the two of them had obviously suffered a heavy blow, yet they still hadn't recovered from it. What was this good? Big brother wouldn't be dispirited because of this, right? He was a little worried. After a long time, Dong Fengyu and Uncle Lian finally woke up from their petrified state. The first thing he did after waking up was to shout, "That whale took our nude photos." Don't worry, he'll help you get it back." Uncle Long was very kind. They might not mind being looked at, but it was not a small problem to have someone keep their evidence as a memory. If they accidentally revealed it, it would be really embarrassing. Uncle Long understood their anxiety. After he finished speaking, he didn't waste any time and immediately chased after the white whale. Can you get it back? Dong Fangyu asked gloomily after Uncle Long left. His expression was rather unsightly. This was the first time he had encountered such a thing in his long life. At the thought of this, he couldn't help but grumble at Leng Ruoxue. What kind of detestable beasts were by that little lass side? Why were all of them so unbearable? Azure was already giving them a headache, and now there was also the white whale that was confused about the situation. It really made him not know what to say. Sighing, Dong Fangyu's face gradually darkened. Then, green smoke began to rise from the top of his head. Seeing this, Dong Fanglin quickly comforted him. "I'll get it back, don't worry. As long as Schwer takes action, that white whale will be easy to deal with." He was very confident in Leng Ruoxue. However, Dong Fangyu did not want Leng Ruoxue to know about such an embarrassing matter. He spoke to Dong Fanglin in an unusually serious tone. "This? You can't tell that girl. If that's the case, I can't guarantee that the white whale will return the naked photos of the two of you." Dong Fanglin said with some difficulty. "We must make it return. Otherwise, we'll be embarrassing ourselves." Uncle Yen gritted his teeth after hearing Dong Fanglin's words. "I'm not sure about that, and you guys don't want Schwer to know either. I can't possibly use force on that white whale. Schwer will kill me." Dong Fanglin shrugged his shoulders helplessly and told the truth. Embarrassing? Who hasn't lost it before? He had been so embarrassed that he was in debt because of a plate of hot and sour potato, but he still endured it. What was the big deal? Of course, he could only keep such an embarrassing thing to himself. He didn't even plan to tell Dong Fangyu. At this moment, Uncle Long came back with a resentful expression. "How is it? Are you coming back?" Seeing this, Uncle Lien immediately said impatiently, "No, I didn't. That little white whale refused to give it to me no matter what. It said that it wanted to take the nude photos of the two of you to exchange for a reward." Uncle Long told the truth, but he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Two unlucky fellows. He was probably even more depressed now. Moreover, he also found out from the white whale about the cause and effect of it taking naked photos of the two of them, and he felt a deep sympathy for the two unlucky people. Uncle Long's reply left Dong Fangyu and Uncle Lien dumbfounded once again. Dong Fanglin took the opportunity to pull Uncle Long to a corner and asked in a low voice, "What's the situation?" "Thanks, Uncle Dragon," then repeated what White Whale had told him to Dong Fanglin. When Dong Fanglin understood what Tsang meant, he was speechless. "If Tsangming is so bored, why did you let it take my big brother's naked photos?" Dong Fanglin said gloomily. The other party was his big brother. He couldn't just ignore it. "Don't talk nonsense. Senior Tsang didn't let it take a picture of your big brother. It's obviously the result of its own actions." Uncle Long explained on Tsang's behalf. Although he hadn't been with Tsang for a long time, he knew that Tsang wouldn't be interested in an outsider. So, he could only blame Dong Fangyu for his bad luck. "What do we do now?" After hearing Uncle Long's words, Dong Fanglin looked around carefully. He was also afraid that his words would reach Tsang's ears. If that happened, he would be the one to suffer. "I can only ask Schwer for help," Uncle Long suggested. "My big brother and the others won't agree," Dong Fanglin said with some hesitation. "Then there's no other way." Uncle Long shrugged his shoulders, indicating that there was nothing he could do. "Why don't you tell them not to worry? Tsang won't publicly announce their marriage, so let them be at ease." Uncle Long thought for a moment and comforted her. "If it were you, would you be at ease?" Dong Fanglin couldn't help but ask. "Of course not. However, with Schwer around, what am I afraid of?" Uncle Long said smugly. "You're ruthless. Let's ask Schwer for help." Dong Fanglin said ruthlessly. It was better to lose face in front of someone than to throw his face into the divine realm. Although they couldn't see the light of day yet, with such a time bomb around, they probably wouldn't be able to live in peace. "That's more like it. It's not a big deal. They'll go find Schwer." Uncle Long was very enthusiastic. After he finished speaking, he left. After Uncle Long left, Dong Fanglin made a few preparations before telling Dong Fangyu and Uncle Lien about asking Uncle Long to look for Leng Ruoxue's help. When the two of them heard this, their faces turned ashen, and they wished they could find a hole to hide in. On the other side, the warm-hearted Uncle Long had just arrived at Lung Ruox's room when he heard the white whale asking for a reward from Cold. Cold's face was dark as he glared at it. As for Lung Ruoxue and Evildoer, one of them had a question mark on his face while the other had a clear understanding. Uncle Long is here. Lung Ruoxue smiled as she greeted Uncle Long. Shue, I have something to discuss with you. Uncle Long held back his laughter and gestured for Lung Ruoxue to go out and talk. Lung Ruoxue followed Uncle Long to the courtyard. After hearing Uncle Long's words, Lung Ruox's eyes couldn't help but widen. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No wonder the little whale suddenly came to her room. It should be known that the little whale would try to avoid any place that was filled with danger. If it couldn't avoid it, it would try to keep its presence as low as possible. That was why she had been wondering why the little whale had suddenly become so high profile. It turned out that there was a reason for this. She finally understood why the little whale had come to ask for a reward. After some thought, Lung Ruoxue smiled and said, Uncle Long, wait for me. With that, Lung Ruoxue returned to her room. Not long after, she returned with a memory crystal in her hand. She passed it to Uncle Long. Uncle Long kept the memory crystal and immediately sent it to Dongfang Yu and Uncle Lien. After the two of them confirmed it, they immediately destroyed the memory crystal and ran away in a hurry. After Lung Ruoxue was done with this matter, she returned to her room and saw the little whale looking at her with a wronged expression. She couldn't help but laugh. She didn't blame it, so why did this little fellow feel aggrieved? Why are you feeling wronged? Lung Ruoxue asked in amusement. My reward has flown away. White Whale said with a bitter expression. You idiot! Who told you to film them? Upon hearing this, Azure was furious. The White Whale's expression became more and more aggrieved. Then who do you want it to shoot? At this time, Evildoer said indifferently. The expression on his face was very unfriendly. However, Azure was not afraid of him. Of course it's yours. Song Zhen said truthfully. All right, you're really bold. Evildoer's expression was calm, but in the next second he immediately attacked Song. This time, he was using his real weapon. A man and a beast fought from inside the house to outside the house, and then from outside the house to outside the house. The battle was so loud that the sky turned dark, and ghosts wailed and wolves howled. As for Lung Ruoxue, she only watched and did not stop them. Seeing this, the crowd was happy to watch the show. At the same time, Dongfang Yu and Uncle Lien, who had just left Lung Ruox's place, suddenly received a message from the Black Fog City. Instantly, their expressions changed. Chapter 2181. Betrayal 1. Something has happened, we need to hurry back. Dongfang Yu's expression was a little anxious. Then, he quickly sent a voice transmission to Dongfang Lin. At the same time, he and Uncle Lien also increased their teleportation speed. The message was sent by Lianjie. Lianjie told them that Black Fog City was under attack. According to Lianjie's guess, the other party was most likely from the Divine Lord's estate. This news caused their hearts to sink, because they knew very well what it meant if the other party had really been sent by the Divine Master's estate. Their secret base had already been exposed, and it was possible that they had been betrayed. This fact made Dongfang Yu's heart feel unusually heavy. He would rather hope that Wu Han had discovered their whereabouts on her own than to see someone sell them out. That would be a fatal blow to them. More importantly, no matter who this person was, he would cause irreparable harm to the people in the buried city. Thinking of this, the two became more and more anxious. At the same time, Dongfang Lin also received his big brother's voice transmission. His expression changed immediately. Then, with a pale face, he looked at Lung Ruoxue and said, Shue, someone is attacking the underground city. I have to go back immediately. Rhyme ice. Lung Ruoxue squinted her beautiful eyes as she said in understanding. Other than that woman, she couldn't think of a second person who had such capabilities. It should be. I have to go back immediately to help. Dongfang Lin hurriedly said, his expression becoming even more flustered. No one cared more about the underground city than he did, including the grass and trees that he had built with his own hands. Therefore, he would not allow anyone to destroy everything, even if the other party was the divine master. Do you think you're in a hurry to go back? Hearing his words, Tsang, who had run to his side at some point in time, said indifferently. Although Tsang and evildoer were in hot pursuit, their divine consciousnesses were unusually powerful. Therefore, they could clearly see Dongfang Lin's reaction. Moreover, they were not far from the underground city. The powerful pressure that was faintly transmitted from there had put them on guard. Therefore, the two of them temporarily stopped fighting. Tsang had originally planned to jump into Lung Ruoxia's arms, but it just so happened to hear Dongfang Lin's words, so it interrupted. It was not optimistic about Dongfang Lin's speed. Tsang, don't tease him, bring us back to Black Fog City. Nothing must happen to the people of the buried city. Lung Ruoxia said helplessly as she looked at Dongfang Lin, who was at a loss. AI. Since Nyo asked, I can't refuse. But you better be prepared, because a war has broken out in the buried city. Azure warned with a serious expression. I know. Sorry to trouble you, senior. Dongfang Lin suddenly became very respectful towards Tsang. At this moment, he truly respected Tsang from the bottom of his heart. Although this rabbit had always looked unreliable, it was enough to prove its strength by begging Lung Ruoxia to take it back to the underground city. And now, time was everything. Lin calmed down. Well, go back with you. Lung Ruoxia saw that Dongfang Lin was so nervous that his hands were shaking and quickly consoled him. Thanks, thank you. When Dongfang Lin heard this, he was so grateful that he became even more incoherent. Initially, he had thought about how to ask Lung Ruoxia for help willingly. Who would have thought that Shuero would volunteer to help without giving him a chance? At this moment, his gratitude towards Lung Ruoxia could not be described with words. However, he immediately felt a little ashamed. How could he think that Shuero would not be willing to go back and help them? Shuero shouldn't be someone who would leave someone in the lurch. At the thought of this, Dongfang Lin felt even more ashamed. He did not even dare to look up at Lung Ruoxia. He really wanted to find a hole to hide in. How could he be so petty? In reality, Lung Ruoxia didn't know what he was thinking. If not, she would have told him that she was someone who could leave people in the lurch. It was just that the people in the underground city were different from the others. They were master's men. Since these people belonged to her master, she naturally wouldn't allow anyone else to touch them. Moreover, if the people who attacked the underground city were really from the ice fog, it meant that the ice fog must have known something. It was even possible that her information had been leaked. In that case, the underground city could not be in trouble. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Moreover, these people were master's subordinates. It was precisely because of this thought that Lung Ruoxia had taken the initiative. Even if Dongfang Lin did not say anything, she would not sit by and do nothing. Apart from his master, Dongfang Lin was also one of the reasons. Don't be too nervous. I don't think the people in the buried city are so useless that they can't hold on for long. You should be confident in the defense of the buried city. We will make it in time. Lung Ruoxia consoled Dongfang Lin when she saw his condition. This fellow's current state really made her worried. However, she could understand. He had watched most of the people in the underground city grow up, so they must have a deep relationship. I hope those people can last longer. At the very least, he had to hold on until they arrived. Tsang, let's go. Following that, Lung Ruoxia looked at Tsang and said, N. Tsang nodded. After Lung Ruoxia kept the house, he immediately enveloped everyone with a layer of faint white light. However, he left out the white whale. The white whale immediately shouted in dissatisfaction, Didn't you want to fight? How can you not bring me along? Little whale, you should go back to the snow sea. The other party might be from the divine master's estate. We don't want to implicate you. Lung Ruoxia said with a faint smile. She didn't want to ruin the white whale's peaceful life. Besides, the white whale didn't seem to like fighting at all. What's wrong with the godlord's estate? Our white whale clan is not afraid of her. If she has the ability, she can come down to the depths of the sea of snow to kill me. She won't freeze to death. The white whale bellowed in anger when it heard Lung Ruox's words. Ah! Hearing the white whale's words, Lung Ruox's mind was in a mess. It seemed like she had overthought it. The white whale did not care about the Divine Master's residence at all. However, it made sense. The rime ice would not go to such great lengths to go deep into the icy sea of snow just to deal with a white whale. She might really freeze to death. At this time, Azure calmly opened his mouth. Xiaobai, it's not that I can't bring you along. However, you'll be following me in the future. If I tell you to go east, you must not go west. If I tell you to catch chickens, you must not go fishing. Song's words made Lung Ruoxue rather speechless. Was he trying to abduct his underlings again? No, it was his little sister. But would the little white whale agree? Lung Ruoxue was a little curious. One must know that the little whale was extremely afraid of the cold. Looking at the anticipation and curiosity in the eyes of the few people in front of him, White Whale, who had been struggling for a long time, nodded his head fiercely to show that he agreed like a strong man breaking his wrist. Chapter 2182, Betrayal 2. Once Azure saw it, he immediately drew it into the range of the halo. Then, Azure teleported with them. In the blink of an eye, a white light flickered before their eyes. In the next second, Azure had already stopped and said, "We've arrived at Black Fog City. Everyone, please get off the bus." Right, remember that you haven't paid the fare yet. Azure glanced at Lung Ruoxue and the rest who were calm and collected as he smiled. Lung Ruoxue and the others had been prepared for Tsang Hu's words. They accepted it and chose to ignore it. However, Dongfang Lin, who had just teleported, staggered and almost fell to the ground. After regaining his balance, the corner of Dongfang Lin's mouth twitched nonstop. Did I hear wrong? This rabbit was asking them for a taxi fare? However, it was undeniable that no one could match the speed of this rabbit. Thinking of this, Dongfang Lin was depressed and sad. He didn't expect that his speed, which was a divine reverence, was not even as fast as a rabbit. How could he bear this? When Lung Ruoxue saw Dongfang Lin's expression, she could guess what he was thinking. However, now wasn't the time to let their thoughts run wild. There were still people waiting for them to save their lives. Then, she went up and gave Dongfang Lin a hard knock on the head before urging, "What are you doing? Hurry back to the buried city." Oh! Only then did Dongfang Lin realize with an ashamed expression that he had jumped. It was a good thing that Shuer had reminded him, and he was extremely glad. Following that, Dongfang Lin led Lung Ruoxue and the rest towards the direction of the underground city. They didn't see anyone along the way and thought that the situation wasn't too serious. But when they were less than a kilometer away from the buried city, they found the first corpse and saw a bloody scene. Dongfang Lin watched as the buried city's people fell into a pool of blood, and these people were all killed by the men in black with swords and knives. The black-robed men had a deep murderous aura around them, and their faces were dark. Every time they raised their swords, a person from the buried city would die under their swords. This scene deeply provoked Dongfang Lin. Instantly, his eyes turned bloodshot, and the veins on his forehead bulged. The hostility in his body was also stimulated. In an instant, die! Dongfang Lin, whose heart was in pain, let out a furious roar and released his own pressure, charging toward the man in black. When Lung Ruoxue saw this, she instantly knew that this was bad. Because this was clearly a scheme by the men in black. Killing people outside the tightly shut city gates was nothing more than an attempt to draw out the people inside the city. At this moment, Dongfang Lin was unable to remain calm, so he naturally did not think of this. However, she guessed that if Dongfang Lin had thought of this, he would have made the same choice. This was because the people in the underground city were all his children. Thanks at the thought of this, Lung Ruoxue shot a look at the demon and Uncle Long. The three of them immediately shot out like arrows and charged towards the man in black. "Wait for me!" The white whale quickly shouted. "Shut up! You will be discovered by the enemy if you speak so loudly." Tsang loudly rebuked. In fact, Some of the sharp-eyed men in black had already noticed them, but they didn't have the time to greet them. Hearing their words, some of the more arrogant men in black couldn't help but laugh. Ha! More people are coming to die. Dongfang Lin, Dongfang Yu, if you two have the ability, you two should hide in there forever and never come out. As for those people you've abandoned outside the city, they'll just be a meal for us brothers. The two leaders of the men in black spoke in unison. I am Dongfang Lin. If you have the ability, come at me. Hearing these provocative words, Dongfang Lin, who was already very close to them, was furious and roared. City Lord, run. Don't worry about us. When the buried city's people saw Dongfang Lin, they immediately shouted, but they were immediately knocked unconscious. So Dongfang Lin wasn't inside. At this time, the leader of the men in black suddenly realized. Who are you people? Ignoring the leader's words, Dongfang Lin narrowed his eyes and coldly asked. Who are we? Guess it yourself. The leader of the men in black laughed and said in an infuriating manner. There's no need to guess, they're people from Rimeice. Lung Ruoxue, who was already standing next to Dongfang Lin, confirmed. Impudent. Is the God Lord's name something you can call? When the leader of the men in black heard Lung Ruoxue calling out the name of the mist ripple, he immediately rebuked her. What? Can't people call her name? I really don't know about that. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. Her beautiful eyes were as cold as ice. If looks could kill, the leader of the men in black before her would have long become a corpse. You're really too impudent. If you have the ability, report your name. My blade doesn't kill nameless people. After the leader of the men in black heard Lung Ruoxue's words, he was even more furious. You're Lung Ruoxue? At this moment, the other leader of the men in black squinted his eyes and looked at Lung Ruoxue. You even know my name. It seems that you have come prepared. Lung Ruoxue was even more clear now. Not bad. We've long heard of your name, Lung Ruoxue, but now that we've met, you're nothing more than this. The leader of the men in black who spoke started to look down on Lung Ruoxue after he saw her strength clearly. To think that the Divine Master had placed so much importance on her this time and had even sent people to contact some of the magical beasts, asking them to send 2 Reverend God-level experts each. Was there a need to go to such lengths to deal with a mere divine emperor? He could not understand. Hearing these words that were obviously looking down on her. Not only was Lung Ruoxue not angry, she was even little jubilant. She liked to play the pig to eat the tiger. The more these people looked down on her, the better, because only then would their memory be more profound. However, she did not intend to let these men in black remember this lesson, because she had no intention of letting them leave alive. I'm only SOSO, but you guys don't seem to be that powerful. Look at you people, you only dare to attack those with low strength. You dare to call yourselves strong? I'm blushing for you guys. Lung Ruoxue glanced at the group of people in black who had been captured and held hostage as she spoke with a look of disdain. There were less than 100 people from the underground city, and they were not very powerful. She had scanned them and realized that the most powerful among them was only a god king. However, even though they were weak, in the face of death, they still displayed a fearless aura. This made Lung Ruoxue feel comforted. You don't have to say these words to anger me. Let me tell you, these people are all on death row. They should have died long ago, and you are the same. The leader of the men in black said calmly. He looked at Lung Ruoxue and the others as if they were already dead. Chapter 2183, Betrayal, 3. As long as you can kill us, then come. Lung Ruoxue scoffed. Then, she suddenly changed the topic and asked, Where's Yaoji? Yaoji, one of the men in black was about to answer but was immediately interrupted by the other man. I don't know anything about Yaoji. Right. We don't know anything about Yaoji? What's Yaoji? Can she be eaten? The leader of the black-clothed men, who had almost said the wrong thing, said in a manner that made it more obvious if he tried to cover it up. When Lung Ruoxue heard their words, she only smiled faintly. Suddenly, Azure's voice rang out from behind the man in black. That woman is here. Following that, a woman rolled to Lung Ruoxue's feet like a ball. Lung Ruoxue raised a leg and stepped on the woman who had rolled to her feet. She looked down at her from above and said, "You're Yaoji?" It hadn't been long since they last met, but why did Yaoji seem like a different person? At this moment, Yaoji's face was abnormally pale. It was as if her entire body had been sucked dry, leaving only a layer of skin and bones. When she heard Lung Ruoxue speaking to her, the woman on the ground raised her head and glared at Lung Ruoxue with a pair of empty and listless eyes that were filled with hatred. "Lung Ruoxue, it's all your fault that I've become like this. I won't let you off. God Lord Mist Ripple has already promised me that she will personally hand you over to me, allowing me to do as I please. At that time, it'll definitely make you wish you were dead." After shouting, Yaoji even laughed wildly. Hearing her words, Lung Ruoxue was speechless. However, she still replied patiently, "You believe her words? You're still as unreasonable as ever. What does it have to do with me that you've turned into this neither human nor ghost? Did I cause you to become like this? Who else could it be if not you? If your beastie didn't expose me, I wouldn't have been punished. You want to imprison me for life? You must be dreaming. Fortunately, I escaped. Otherwise, I would have been tortured to death by you sooner or later." Yaoji's endless complaints made Dongfang Lin want to kill her right now to avenge the innocent people of the underground city. However, he still endured it because he knew that now was not the time to kill her. It's obvious that you have bad intentions, yet you still dare to blame Shuer? Do you know? We were going to destroy your cultivation base. If someone didn't plead for you, you wouldn't have been imprisoned for life. But now, not only are you not repenting, you're blaming everything on Shuer and even bringing our enemies here. How can you face Master Yu by doing this? Don't tell me you've forgotten how you've been tortured by the miasma for so many years? You've harmed others and yourself for your own selfish motives. Even if you die, do you have the face to see Master Yu? Dongfang Lin reproached. No. Master Yu won't blame me. I was forced. You are all on her side. You are all forcing me. It's your fault. It's all your fault. Dongfang Lin's words made Yaoji lose control of herself. However, she didn't think she was in the wrong. If they treated her better, she wouldn't have to do this. However, they had abandoned her one by one. How could she not hate them? Yaoji, you've really disappointed me. Suddenly, a loud shout was heard. The person who spoke was Uncle Lien, who had rushed back with Dongfang Yu. Even though they were surprised that Lung Ruoxue and the others were faster than them, this was clearly not the time to ask about this. Furthermore, they happened to hear Yaoji's words. Instantly, Uncle Lien was enraged. Dongfang Yu, who was standing at the side, looked at the men in black, then at the corpses on the ground and the rivers of blood before him. In an instant, Dongfang Yu flew into a rage. Then, he quickly rushed to the side of the man in black closest to him and grabbed him with his hand. He then grabbed the man's neck with one hand and twisted it gently. The man in black then stopped breathing. Then, he continued to do the same thing. In just a few minutes, he had killed dozens of men in black. All of this happened very quickly. By the time the leader of the men in black reacted, nearly 1/5 of his subordinates had already died. Damn it! And who are you? Report your name. The leader of the men in black roared in anger. "I'm Dongfang Yue." Dongfang Yu said coldly, his eyes spitting fire. He looked at the leader of the men in black as if he was looking at a dead man. "I'm Lien Cheng. You can call me Uncle Lien." Uncle Lien also reported his name. "How dare you kill my people?" Hearing the names of these two men, the leader of the men in black became even angrier. However, what made him even angrier was that the old man surnamed Lien actually wanted him to call him Uncle Lien. This was preposterous. So what if I killed him? Since you've come here today, don't even think about going back alive. After hearing the leader's words, Dongfang Yu sneered. A cold aura suddenly appeared from his body, and his aura was terrifying. Thanks, however, after hearing what Dongfang Yu said, the man in black laughed instead of being afraid. Then he said to the void, "Everyone's here, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and come out to help." As the man in black finished speaking, 6 figures appeared in the sky. From afar, Lung Ruoxue and the rest could hear the rumbling sounds of running. It was obvious that the man in black had found a helper. The 6 people in front of them were all hierarch-level cultivators. Although they had hidden their auras very well, Dongfang Yu and the others could not help but be alarmed by their imposing auras. These people were definitely strong enemies. The aura they exuded was not something the 2 leaders in black could compare with. Although these people were all reverent god level, there was still a difference between the strong and the weak. And these 6 people clearly belonged to the stronger side. Dongfang Yu carefully assessed the strength of the 6 men, secretly measuring the gap in strength between them. If it was a one-on-one battle, these 6 people's strength would probably be equal to his. However, if the 6 of them attacked at the same time, he had no confidence in fighting the others except for him. Lung Ruoxue's strength was only at the divine sovereign level, so he was not sure if she could fight against these reverent god-level cultivators. Uncle Yen and Dongfang Lin were definitely not their match. As for the rabbit, the demonic man, and Uncle Long, to be honest, he had no idea how strong they were. Even though they had fought each other before, he still did not know their true strength. Hence, it was hard for him to judge. At the thought of this, Dongfang Yu took a deep look at Lung Ruoxue. Seeing that she was still able to remain calm and composed in front of so many powerful enemies, talking and laughing, he was even more satisfied with her. Unfortunately, wasn't it too late now? At this moment, Dongfang Yu felt a deep sense of helplessness and regret. At this moment, including the lukewarm relationship between them and Lung Ruoxue, as well as Yaoji's betrayal, everything seemed to have been inseparable from his decision. It was him. He was the one who harmed the buried city citizens. Dongfang Yu was extremely remorseful. He even took all the blame on himself. Moreover, he was determined to die. No matter what, even if he had to resort to self-destruction, he would do his best to protect these people in front of him. Especially Lung Ruoxue. Initially, he had no intention of dragging Lung Ruoxue into this matter. He did not want his entire army to be annihilated. After all, as long as there was life, there was hope. Furthermore, Lung Ruoxue was the disciple who had received Master Ye's inheritance. If anything were to happen to her, he would blame himself even more. As long as Lung Ruoxue was alive and well, Master Yu and the rest of them would be avenged one day. However, he had forgotten to remind Dongfang Lin when he was transmitting his voice to his younger brother. Hence, when he saw Lung Ruoxue here, he was extremely shocked, but at the same time, he felt a sense of relief for no reason. He didn't know why he would have such a thought. It was as if he had eaten a calming pill when he saw Lung Ruoxue. His originally anxious heart had also calmed down in an instant. Even so, he was still worried that Lung Ruoxue would be injured. At this moment, he was feeling conflicted. He hoped to see Lung Ruoxue display her godly might, but he was also afraid to see her get hurt. Hence, for a moment, his expression became conflicted. Seeing him like this, Lung Ruoxue hurriedly shouted, "Don't let your thoughts run wild. Let's deal with these people first." Upon hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, the men in black and the 6 hierarch experts could not help but burst out in laughter as though they had just heard a huge joke. However, Lung Ruoxue did not seem to mind. Let them be smug for a while. They'll be crying soon. At the same time, Lung Ruoxue pointed at Yaoji, who was lying on the ground in a sorry state. "Dongfang Yu, how do you plan to deal with this woman? I said that I would teach her to you. You decide." Dongfang Yu glanced at Yaoji coldly and then turned his head away. Hearing this, Yaoji immediately shouted, "Dongfang Yu, you can't do this to me. It can't. I'm a hero. If you hand me over to this woman, Sir Ye's subordinates will be disappointed. Your actions will truly chill our hearts." Uncle Yen roared angrily when he heard this. At this moment, his intestines were also turning green from the destruction. Looking at his dead companions, he felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. If he had known that Yaoji would bite back at them, he wouldn't have pleaded for her even if he had to die. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. I was forced. You forced me to do this. I didn't want to. Yaoji's eyes flickered as she tried to defend herself. However, Lung Ruoxue obviously didn't want to hear her speak any more nonsense. She immediately sent a wind blade at Yaoji's body, knocking her out. She wouldn't let Yaoji die too easily. Otherwise, she'd be letting down those who died. Chapter 2184:1 by 1. Lung Ruoxue kicked Yaoji back to Tsong, then turned to Dongfang Yu and the rest. Let's deal with these black-clothed men first. All right. Dongfang Yu and the others quickly said. At that moment, the blue fate white whale took a good look at Yaoji and teleported in front of the 6 supreme gods. My girl said that we have to deal with the black-clothed man first, so you little guys can live a little longer. After saying that, Azure narrowed his dark eyes. With a light sweep, he already knew the strength of these 6 people. If Nyo was alone, it would still be somewhat difficult to deal with these guys. However, Nyo had quite a few trump cards, so in its eyes, these people were here for its Nyo to practice. Since that was the case, there was no need for it to make a move. After making up his mind, Azure decided that as long as these guys didn't run away, he would just stand by and watch. After all, it was a rare opportunity to fight with an expert. However, its words made the 6 of them sneer. They never dreamed that a rabbit would dare to run up to them and make such a big fuss. Wasn't this the rhythm of seeking death? Among the 6, the one with the worst temper heard Song's words and said with disdain, "Little rabbit, you can go back to where you came from. This lord won't kill you, but killing you would be too embarrassing for this lord. Damn it, you're the rabbit, your whole family are rabbits?" When Azure heard this, he roared in anger. Although he looked like a rabbit now, he didn't really think of himself as a rabbit. Furthermore, rabbits weren't easy to deal with. When a rabbit was anxious, it would bite. I'm not a rabbit. I'm one of the ancestors of the Phoenix clan. The person who spoke corrected him in a serious manner. Their conversation rendered everyone present speechless. Was this the time to argue about this? When Lung Ruoxue heard the words, "old ancestor of the Phoenix clan," she intentionally glanced at that person. In reality, she had already found out the identity of these people from Qingju and Song. The 6 of them were from the Phoenix clan, Dragon clan, and White Tiger clan respectively. They were also the top experts among the 3 clans. Unfortunately, these people were invited by Wuling to help her in the battle. This also meant that they were her enemies. Since they were enemies, she would not show any mercy. However, it would be a pity to kill them. Lung Ruoxue thought to herself. She had already thought of a place for them to go. However, the premise was that these people had to first become his defeated opponents. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxue transmitted a message to Tsong. "Tsong, I want to capture these people alive." Captured alive? A living one was much harder to capture than a dead one. However, since this is Nyo's wish, then I will naturally satisfy it. Don't worry. With me here, none of them will be able to escape, so you just have to deal with them properly. Azure replied with a smile. It was only in charge of looking after these people, not catching them. Yes, I'm just afraid that they'll run away when they see the situation is not right. The ancestors of these beasts are much more cunning than ordinary beasts. Hearing Tsong's words, Lung Ruoxue could finally go all out. As she looked at the men in black and the 6 hierarch, Lung Ruoxue felt a sense of excitement. This was a good opportunity to practice. Following which, Lung Ruoxue sent a voice transmission to Evildoer, Uncle Long, Brother Dongfang Lin, and Uncle Lien, indicating for everyone to work together and deal with these men in black first. Thanks, the few of them communicated with their eyes. In an instant, they attacked at the same time. Instantly, the weather changed. The land in front of the buried city's gate was covered by a dark cloud, and the smell of blood was everywhere. The men in black didn't even have time to react before they were killed by the few people who moved quickly. Upon seeing this, the Phoenix tribe's old ancestor, who was in a stalemate with Tsong, trembled in anger. These people were really too impudent. They dared to start a massacre in front of him. This was preposterous. The fiery-tempered old ancestor of the Phoenix clan couldn't bear to see this scene. In fact, he even felt that this was a blatant provocation to him. His anger shot up to the top of his head. When the other 5 saw this scene, they also deeply felt that their dignity had been challenged. Therefore, each of their faces were unusually ugly. The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan wanted to rush into the battle and turn the situation around. However, when Song saw this, he didn't stop him. Instead, he opened up a path for him. However, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan had only managed to teleport a few steps when he realized that he had been blocked. In front of his eyes, there was a transparent film that was almost invisible to the naked eye, blocking his way. As soon as the ancestor saw it, his aura immediately rose. Then, a majestic divine power of fire nature descended from the sky and struck the thin film. However, the thin film did not move at all. Seeing this, the ancestor of the Phoenix clan was instantly enraged. He released a few more majestic divine powers, but still, there was not even a ripple on the thin film. Damn it! Hurry up and come help. Glancing at the men in black who were getting fewer and fewer in number, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan turned around and shouted, "It seems like your strength has regressed. You can't even break such a simple barrier. It was too embarrassing. Don't say I know you." At this moment, a man in white clothes said with a faint smile, "You stupid cat, what nonsense are you talking about? If you have the ability, then come." The moment the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan heard this, her face turned ashen. Then she said in an unpleasant tone, "Get out of the way." The white-robed man who had spoken said indifferently. Then he walked past the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan and stood in front of the barrier. Then he struck the transparent barrier with a wind blade. However, the thin barrier remained the same as before, not leaving a single mark. "No matter what, you can't do it either." The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan taunted. "I was just testing the quality of the barrier." The man in white said stubbornly, "Oh really? Then continue, I'll be waiting for your good news." After the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan finished speaking, she immediately stood to the side and crossed her arms in front of her chest, waiting for someone to break the barrier. The man in white used wind blades several times, but they were unable to do anything to the transparent barrier. Then he became anxious. One wind blade after another hacked at the transparent barrier until he used up too much divine power and his face turned pale. He had no choice but to stop. "How is it? You can't do anything to this barrier, can you?" The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan said with a hint of gloating. "I don't have a choice, but you don't have the right to criticize me, because you won't be able to break this barrier either." The white-robed man retorted, "All right, you two stop quarreling. Let's give it a try." The black-clothed middle-aged man among the 6 people could not bear to watch any longer. The moment he opened his mouth, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan and the white-robed man shut their mouths obediently. From this, it could be seen that these 6 people regarded him as their leader. Chapter 2185:1 by 1, 2. In the following time, the remaining 4 people appeared one by one. Each of them tried a few times, but their results were still the same. Immediately, the 6 of them had a headache. They were already Reverend God-level cultivators, but they still couldn't break through a barrier. If this news spread, they would be laughed at. Thinking of this, the 6 of them looked at each other and then nodded at the same time. Then the 6 of them attacked at the same time, and 6 rays of 3-colored divine power hit the barrier together. Song, who was watching from the side, saw them and laughed in his heart. He continued to work hard. Its barrier was not that easy to break. Not to mention them, even if Rime Ice came, it would not be able to do anything to its barrier. Song was so proud in his heart. As for the enmity of being ignored by them, he would remember it for them first. In any case, there would be a day when he could take revenge. The 6 of them were completely focused on how to break the barrier. As a result, Song, this unremarkable little rabbit, was automatically ignored by them. Moreover, Song was a vengeful person, so they were not far from bad luck. Of course, They didn't know that they had been remembered by Tsang. However, before they knew Tsang's identity, they probably wouldn't care even if they knew. Azure found a good spot to sit down and watch the show. At the same time, the footsteps were getting closer. When Blue turned around, he saw the owner of the footsteps, the herd of beasts, running in front of him. They were only separated by a barrier, and they looked at each other affectionately for a moment before Blue grinned. There were quite a lot of varieties. It seemed that this encirclement and suppression was not of ordinary importance to Wu Yen. Most of the Divine Realm's beast clans had been brought here by her. These beasts should be the descendants of the beasts who had colluded with Wu Xiao back then, right? However, the strength of the beasts that came later was not just a little bit weaker than the 6 Reverend God level experts. In fact, Song's guess wasn't completely accurate. Although most of these beasts were the descendants of beasts who had once worn the same pants as the fog, a considerable number of them were afraid of the threat of the fog, so they had no choice but to send people over. Those beasts who had come to make up the numbers did not even know what they were here for. When they came, their clan leader had only instructed them to do what others did. If there was any danger, he must first think of a way to save his life. It was precisely because of the instructions from the higher-ups that they had no pressure. As for the beastly descendants who had colluded with the Mist Ripple, they had only heard that he had helped the Divine Lord's estate to suppress the rebels. Other than that, they knew nothing else. A group of clueless beastie had come here to find their leader, which was the 6 Reverend God level experts. However, just as they were about to approach the 6 seniors, they were blocked by a barrier. Instantly, the impatient beastie was enraged. The first one to come out was a huge rhinoceros. It used its sharp horn to poke the transparent barrier. However, the barrier did not break. Instead, it was bounced back by the barrier and heavily hit a huge tree not far away. It was stuck in the trunk. Arg! Quickly help me! The heavy rhinoceros grimaced in pain. A branch as thick as a baby's arm had just pierced through its body. Thanks seeing this, the other beastie immediately wanted to help, but before they could reach the side of the stupid rhinoceros, they were blocked by a barrier. Just bear with it. We can't get through. Some of the beasts covered their eyes, not daring to look at the miserable state of the rhinoceros, and even more so, not daring to touch the barrier that had appeared out of nowhere. Otherwise, they would learn from the rhinoceros' mistakes. Be good, you guys. I promise I won't hurt you, Azure said with a smile. At this moment, the 6 Reverend God level cultivators who had been fighting against the barrier also turned around and glanced at the herd of beasts not far away before fixing their eyes on Azure. The Phoenix ancestor roared angrily, "Damn it! Did you do it? So what if I am? So what if he wasn't he? I've said it before, my girl has to deal with those men in black first, and then it'll be your turn. So, have some patience and just wait here." Azure Cloud said lightly, but his words made the 6 hierarch furious. Damn it! What did he take them for? He actually wanted them to wait in place? Or was he waiting to be beaten up? Although the 6 of them did not have the highest status in their respective clans, they were not low either. And when had they ever received such treatment? Therefore, the 6 of them were so angry that they were about to explode. But at this moment, they really couldn't do anything to this rabbit. They could fight it with the barrier, and it didn't care if they scolded it. This fact made the 6 of them depressed. Seeing them like this, Song continued, "I say, you little guys, why didn't you stay in the clan and instead hung out with that ugly woman, Wu Cheng? I really feel that it's not worth it for you guys. He's really too pitiful. In a while. Don't fight, don't snatch, everyone has a chance." Azure didn't give the other party a chance to speak as he continued. "Damn it. Are you done? Shut up." The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was going a little crazy. If he could, he really wanted to give this damned rabbit a good beating. Unfortunately, he couldn't reach it. Also, what did he mean by, no one should fight, or no one should snatch? What were they fighting for? What were they fighting for? He felt like he was going to be driven crazy by a detestable rabbit. "You want me to shut up so he'll shut up? Then he'll lose face." Song grinned when he heard the phoenix ancestor's words. You, the old phoenix, who had lived for many years, was so angry that he couldn't speak. He could only keep pointing at Song with his eyes wide open. Seeing him like this, Song sighed heavily and comforted, "Calm down. I can understand how you feel, but unfortunately, I can't help you." After saying that, Song Huan shrugged his shoulders and put on a helpless expression. The 6 hierarch-level divine beasts and the other beasts were rendered speechless. They did not know what to say. Judging from the current situation, it seemed that they were trapped. Lung Ruoxue, who was not far away, had been fighting with the men in black. However, her opponents were all ordinary men in black. The leader of the men in black had been taken over by Dongfang Yu and Uncle Lien. Therefore, while she was clearing out the small fries, she had been paying attention to Song from the corner of her eyes. Seeing that the 6 of them were angered to the point of almost vomiting blood, Lung Ruoxue was already laughing in her heart. However, her hands didn't stop at all. She even competed with the evildoer to see who was faster. In an instant, the men in black were reduced in numbers. Dongfang Lin and Uncle Long became anxious when they saw the speed of the 2 men. They also hastened their speed of killing the men in black. The 4 of them immediately began to fight each other. Chapter 2186:1 by 1, 3. The white whale, who was watching the battle with Yaoji in tow, was itching for a fight. However, it had a mission to keep an eye on this annoying woman, so it didn't dare to move. It was afraid that the woman would take the opportunity to escape. If that happened, that pervert Song wouldn't let it go. At this moment, the tightly shut gates of the underground city opened a crack and a man walked out. Although Bai Jing did not recognize this man, he knew that he was with Lung Ruoxue. Therefore, he picked up Yaoji and handed her over to the man. "Watch this woman, don't let her escape. I'm going to fight too." He stuffed Yaoji into the man's hands and worriedly gave him a warning. Then Bai Jing rushed into the battle. After the white whale charged into the battle, its body immediately expanded. Then, with a sweep of its long tail, voila! Every time it swept, a large number of people in black disappeared. Looking at the ferocious white whale and the unconscious Yaoji in his hand, Lianjia wanted to cry but had no tears. He had come out to help, but how did he become a prisoner? However, he really had to take good care of this woman. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to explain it to his ancestor. Then, he turned his gaze to the mountain of corpses on the ground. Instantly, his heart ached. These people had sacrificed themselves for the safety of the buried city. He would never forget the words they had said to him, "Close the city gate, don't worry about us." This sentence became almost everyone's last words before they died, and it also became the nightmare of the survivors in the city. Among the dead, some were unable to return to the city in time, while others were trying to buy time for the people in the city. No matter which one it was, they were all heroes of the underworld. They were all worthy of his respect. Among them, there were also people from the Lien family. And the main culprit of all this was the woman in his hands. Lianjia's eyes were filled with hatred as he turned to look at the skinny Yaoji. If he could, he really wanted to cut Yaoji into 8 pieces right now. However, killing her so easily would be letting her off too easily. Thinking of this, he suppressed the hatred in his heart. Then, he shifted his gaze to the remaining men in black. With Yaoji in one hand, he began to slaughter them. However, he wasn't satisfied with killing them, because before he could kill them, the black-clothed men in front of him were killed one by one. This fact made him very depressed. Until Dongfang Lin walked up to him and patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. "You've done well." He was referring to the fact that Lianjia had protected the lives of most of the people in the underground city. As for those who had fallen, he did not wish for Lianjia to have any burden in his heart. "City Lord, I'm sorry." Hearing Dongfang Lin's words, Lianjia became even more uneasy. "I've said it." "You've done well," Dongfang Lin said with a serious expression. "Keep an eye on Yaoji. It'll help Big Brother deal with the leader of the men in black." Dongfang Lin continued. Then he moved to Dongfang Yu's side and launched a sneak attack while the leader was fighting with his big brother. He hit the man in black on the back. A mouthful of blood spurted out from the leader's mouth, while Dongfang Lin stood next to his big brother with an indifferent expression. It was as if they were brothers of one heart and could work together to break metal. Seeing this, the leader of the men in black was so angry that he spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood, his face instantly turning pale. After wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, he glared at Dongfang Lin and questioned him angrily, "Don't tell me you plan to fight 2 against 1? This is not what a gentleman would do." He was so angry. It was already difficult for him to deal with Dongfang Yu. If he had to deal with another reverent god, would he still be able to survive? When Dongfang Lin heard the leader's words, it was like he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He said disdainfully, "Don't tell me you're a gentleman? Ha! How could this guy be a gentleman? Blackie, we're not going to fight 2 on 1. We're planning to gang up on him." At this moment, Leng Ruoxue walked over and said with a smile. As soon as she said this, the leader of the men in black, who was obviously not able to take it, spat out a mouthful of blood into the air like a fountain. When he realized that the subordinates he had brought with him had all been killed, he spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood. When Leng Ruoxue and the rest saw this, they took a step back in tacit understanding to avoid being splashed by the blood that the leader of the men in black had spat out. The leader of the men in black, who had lost too much blood, saw this and his vision turned black. He fainted from anger. Upon seeing this, Leng Ruoxue and the others exchanged glances and revealed a helpless expression. This person's mental endurance was not the usual kind of weak. Why did he faint from anger? "Thanks, you're not pretending to faint, are you?" Leng Ruoxue asked suspiciously. She had never known that reverent god-level cultivators could faint so easily. However, she had witnessed it today. "It's possible." Dongfang Lin stroked his chin and spoke in an extremely cautious manner. "Wake him up. Even if we're bullying him, we have to make sure he's alive and kicking," Leng Ruoxue suggested. After hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, Dongfang Lin's face was filled with black lines. He thought to himself, this leader of the men in black might just like to be bullied by you while he's unconscious. In any case, if it were him, he would definitely not want to wake up. Following that, Dongfang Lin saw a white flash before his eyes. Then, several silver needles as thick as chopsticks appeared in Leng Ruoxue's hand. The silver needles seemed familiar, and it instantly made his hair stand on end. He felt some sympathy for the unconscious leader of the men in black. In the next second, Dongfang Lin saw Leng Ruoxue's fair wrist move slightly, and the silver needles in her hand pierced the chest of the leader of the men in black. However, the leader did not wake up. Following that, Dongfang Lin only saw the shadow of Leng Ruoxue's wrist flash past. When the shadow disappeared, the unconscious leader of the men in black had already been stabbed like a porcupine. Moreover, blood was seeping out of every hole in his body. It was a shocking and terrifying sight. In just a few minutes, the ground was dyed red by his blood. The moment the leader of the men in black became a porcupine, he was awoken by the pain. However, when he saw the condition of his body, his eyes rolled back and he fainted again. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue's interest in the leader of the men in black was greatly reduced. Then, with a kick, she sent the porcupine to Dongfang Yu's feet and said, "I'll leave this guy to you, don't let him die. I still have use for it. Don't worry. I'll keep an eye on him." Dongfang Yu promised with a nod. Leng Ruoxue's move had also shocked him. In fact, he really wanted to ask, "How many of these silver needles do you have?" However, after thinking about it, he swallowed this question. After receiving Dongfang Yu's assurance, Leng Ruoxue set her sights on the other leader of the men in black who was fighting with Uncle Lien. Although the leader of the men in black was fighting with Uncle Lien, their strength was on par. Hence, he was more relaxed in his fight. However, it was also because of this that he had seen Leng Ruoxue's move from the corner of his eyes. Now that Leng Ruoxue was staring at him, his heart trembled. Before they came, his lord had specifically warned them to be careful of Leng Ruoxue and the Totoro that followed her. However, when they saw that Leng Ruoxue only had the strength of a divine emperor and did not see any sign of the Totoro, they let their guard down. He even felt that his lord was worrying for nothing. What was there to be afraid of a puny divine emperor? But now, he didn't think so. This woman wasn't human at all. How could she do such a terrifying thing? She could even do it to someone who had been turned into a sieve? Just as he was thinking about this, he saw that Ling Ruoxue was already standing behind Uncle Lien. Instantly, his hand trembled, and the divine power he gathered in his hand was deflected, hitting the barrier that Tsang had set up. Instantly, Tsang was furious. "You idiot! Can't you aim properly before you fight?" Azure fire roared. "Tsang, calm down." Ling Ruoxue smiled and comforted Tsang, who was a little angry. Then she turned to the leader of the men in black and said, "Don't be afraid. Perform well, I'm just a bystander. I want attack." The leader of the men in black, who had been so frightened that he had lost his grip, staggered and almost fell to the ground when he heard this. He couldn't help but think in his heart, "Won't attack? No way." If he believed this woman's words, wouldn't he have lived all these years in vain? It was undeniable that Ling Ruoxue's words had caused him to feel even more pressured, and he could no longer focus. Not only did he have to carefully avoid Uncle Lien's attacks and defend himself in time, he also had to split a portion of his attention to pay attention to Ling Ruoxue. In the beginning, he could barely manage it, but as time went on, he felt more and more exhausted. Seeing that Uncle Lien had been fighting for so long and still couldn't take down his opponent, the evildoer couldn't stand it anymore. He directly kicked out his leg and kicked the black-clothed leader's butt. The leader, who was completely unprepared, was kicked to the city wall by the evildoer. A bang was heard. With a loud sound, the leader of the men in black was embedded into the wall in the shape of a Chinese character. After that, his head drooped down and he fainted. Dong Fangyu and the others were dumbfounded by this scene. This kick was really powerful. Then, they walked closer to take a closer look. Uncle Lien even reached out to pull the unlucky leader out, but he couldn't move him at all. Seeing this, Uncle Lien immediately gave up and looked at the evildoer with a burning gaze. He was an idol. That kick was so powerful. Although he was a reverent god, he knew that there was no way he could kick his opponent, who was also a reverent god, into the wall. For a moment, the image of the evildoer in his heart was instantly elevated. At this moment, Ling Ruoxue's voice rang in Uncle Lien's ears. "Let them come over. That's right, one by one." Chapter 2187. I don't fight with women, one by one? What did that mean? Upon hearing this, Uncle Lien, Dongfang Lin, and Dongfang Yu were all confused. However, they immediately understood what Ling Ruoxue meant. This was because they had seen one of the 6 Reverend God level experts being kicked over by Tsang. This unfortunate Reverend God was none other than the Phoenix clan's old ancestor. After the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was kicked out of the barrier, he was like a wild horse that had been let loose. He was ready to attack Ling Ruoxue and the others. However, he soon realized that he was the only one who had come out of the barrier. His other 5 companions were still blocked by the barrier. As for his opponents, they were 2, a total of 7 people and 1 white whale. At that moment he, who had been in high spirits, broke out in cold sweat. Was this the rhythm of a group fight? They're such bullies. The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan, who had been brimming with confidence, could no longer muster up any of his confidence when he saw that there were at least 6 Reverend God level experts on the other side. He was cursing in his heart. This was too much of a bully. You can't bully a beast like this, okay? He wanted to roar at the sky, but the other 5 hierarch experts sent by the beast race were at a loss for words when they saw this scene through the enchantment. Never in their dreams did they expect that their departure would be so unfavorable. One had to know that before they came, they did not think that this operation would be so difficult. In truth, they couldn't be blamed for this. When they had requested for the beast race to send people over, Fog Ripple had been afraid that they would cower upon hearing Azure's name. Thus, she had not informed them of Azure's existence. Otherwise, they would definitely not have sent people over so easily. Now, even if they wanted to retreat, they had nowhere to go. Just that transparent barrier had blocked all of their escape routes. Now, they saw the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan become the first unlucky person to try the crab. This fact left them with mixed feelings because the unknown fate of the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan could very well be theirs as well. Unless the 6 of them could join forces, but it seemed that with this barrier and the unknown rabbit, this idea could only become a dream. At the thought of this, the other 5 people who were still in the barrier were completely depressed. After living for so long, this feeling was indeed new to them. But the ones who were even more surprised should be Dongfang Yu, Uncle Lien, and Lianjia. When the 3 of them saw this scene, they were stunned for a long time before they came back to their senses. After they came back to their senses, the 3 of them still couldn't believe what they were seeing. What was going on? So this was what that girl meant when she said to do it one by one. The 3 of them rubbed their eyes and felt that they were seeing things. However, they soon realized that the unlucky fellow was still there. Moreover, his face was dark and unsightly. Seeing this, the 3 of them sympathized with him. Thanks Dongfang Yu in particular, was deeply worried. He felt that he had been struggling with his thoughts for so long and had even thought of self-destruction, but now it seemed that he had thought too much. Sighing lightly, Dongfang Yu sighed in his heart. As expected of the disciple chosen by the great master. This mental quality, this aura, this calm and composed appearance really made him feel ashamed. At the same time, he felt even more ashamed. Previously, why was he so bewitched that he agreed with some people's thoughts and felt that a little girl was really difficult to take on great responsibilities? Now, it seemed that he was judging people by their appearance. This girl might look like a woman on the outside, but the strength in her bones was something that many men could not compare to. Moreover, this girl had many seemingly mysterious and powerful people by her side. He had really misjudged her in the past. At this moment, he was both regretful and glad. He regretted that he had given up on Lung Ruoxue back then. He was also glad that their relationship with Lung Ruoxue had not reached an irredeemable stage. However, if they wanted to have a harmonious relationship with Lung Ruoxue, they would probably have to go through a lot of trouble. That girl was very vengeful. He did not know if she would forgive them for their rudeness. Dongfang Yu was not very confident about this. After all, he had made it clear many times that they had decided to be loyal to Lung Ruoxue. However, that girl kept playing Tai Chi with them, which made them feel very helpless. What are you guys doing? The Phoenix clan's ancestor's trembling voice sounded out of thin air, instantly rousing the conflicted Dongfang Yu. How could he be so muddled? There was a strong enemy in front of him. Was this the time to think about such things? Then, Dongfang Yu sneered at the ancestral master of the Phoenix clan and said, "What are we doing? We should be the ones asking this, right? What are you guys doing?" Although his voice was as cold as a 1,000-year-old glacier, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was clearly thinking about how to fight the enemy and protect the lives of these little fellows, but now it seemed that he had been overthinking. The situation before them was quite advantageous to them. Now, the beasts who had come to help were the ones who were more pitiful. Glancing at the beasts whose mouths were half open, clearly in shock and disbelief, Dongfang Yu's sympathy for them deepened. As for himself, he felt more relaxed. After hearing Dongfang Yu's words, the ancestor of the Phoenix clan was speechless for a long time. They were supposed to do something, but the situation on both sides had been reversed, so he was a little speechless. Just like that, Lung Ruoxue and the others stared at the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan. The feeling of being stared at by 6 reverent gods and 2 deity emperors was extremely unpleasant. The old Phoenix ancestor felt that his legs had gone soft. No matter how arrogant and confident he was in his own strength, he wasn't sure if he could take on 6 reverent god-level experts and 2 emperor god-level experts who were eyeing him like prey. His 6th sense even told him that the 2 emperor god-level experts were even more difficult to deal with than the 6 reverent god-level experts. That's right, there was also a rabbit with unknown strength. Thinking of that rabbit, the anger of the husband and ancestor of the Feng clan instantly surged. After all, it was all because of that damned rabbit that he ended up like this. He hated Song to the core, but in the face of a situation where the enemy was stronger than him, he could only endure it. At that thought, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan calmed herself down and cleared her throat. You guys want to fight the few with numbers? That's not what a gentleman should do. What a joke. Have we ever said that we are gentlemen? Lung Ruoxue sneered. She then continued, You're not gentlemen, and you want us to treat you like gentlemen? You're thinking too much. The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was at a loss for words, but he still insisted, no matter what, you can't fight with numbers. That's too much of a bully. I'm sorry, but we didn't seem to be bullying people. Besides, I'm bullying you, so what? At the same time, she wanted to show Dongfang Yu, Uncle Lien, and the others how she should treat her enemies. In case they didn't know how happy they were, you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.